Alrighty.
Okay. I guess we'll call this meeting to order. Looks like 6:02. You want to call roll, Ashley?
Yes, ma'am. Board Chair Ellen Ermis.
Here.
I'm sorry. Board Vice Chair Ellen Ermis. Board Member Julia Fishback. Here. Board Member Erica Ibarra. Board Member Board Member Chanel Walker. Board Member Ryan Ramirez. Here. Board Member Julianne Orgish.
Here.
Board Member Ann Duhan.
Here.
Okay. So we do not have Erica Ibarra or Chanel Walker. We want to do a motion to excuse both committee members, board members.
I don't know of any.
I'll make a motion to excuse.
Oh, thank you. Second. All in favor? Next, we'll consider approval of the Parks and Rec Board minutes from the meeting of August 25th. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
As they are. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did you get that? Julie and Julie? All in favor? We did it. Okay. Next, we have citizen comments. Parks and Recreation Board welcomes comments from citizens early in the agenda of the Parks and Recreation Board meeting. Those wishing to speak are encouraged to sign in before the meeting begins. Speakers may be provided with an opportunity to speak during this time on any agenda item or any other matter concerning city business, and they must observe the 3-minute time limit. Do we have any requests for public comment?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kenneth Rocha, hometown Kyle. It's game day for the Denver Broncos, so apologize for the attire, but I'm in game mode already. So last board meeting, we talked about several things and allowing this board to do their due diligence as far as what information is presented. I applaud staff. I see a lot more included information in the agenda items, such as and presentation material like funding. That helps us a lot. What I'm here to speak about is the pocket park for the Heritage Live Oak or the Port Oak relocation. I see part of the presentation, which you'll hear today, is a change of timeline. Some of that information had been presented to our HOA, Hometown Kyle, about the reasons for that. I don't know if Parks and Rec staff are aware of the specific reasons, but what has been advocated is that there's been a delay with some of the property in question where the tree is being relocated to, as well as the design of the park itself. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. Some of that information was conveyed by the consultant Rifeline, who the city has a resolution with to provide, I believe, stakeholder engagement information as part of the road bond facilitation. But we're not always seeing the information or hearing the same information between consultant, staff, and even council members. And so as this board gets the information about the park itself, remembering that the community members may potentially be hearing something, you may be hearing something different, council may be under an impression of something different based off of conversations before. So we're just trying to get a good idea of what is the plan for not only the tree location, but the park design. As I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head whether or not that has been presented to council yet, but I think the proposal has. And then finally, the Vibe Trail, as associated with Hometown Kyle subdivision. The Vibe Trail is due to run right along my back fence line. And so I know the Vibe Trail is linked to the road bond and to the street expansion. One thing I've engaged with our hometown is to submit a formal request from our HOA, hometown, to have the Vibe Trail moved to the west side of the road versus having it on the east side, which is on the Six Creek side when you're going north on Old Stagecoach Road. And to have the Vibe Trail integrate with the park, it just makes sense, and as the park board, it'd be good for y'all to review. Thank you.
Any other comments? Citizen comments? Okay, we'll move on to item agenda 4, staff reports and presentations. We'll receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff direction on conceptual designs and standards for park monument and wayfinding signage as a part of a cohesive citywide park signage program. Chris Escoto.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Chris Escoto, Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation. As alluded, today we're here to talk about the park signage plan. This is a plan that we're truly excited for. One of the components that will be factored into this concept itself, as you're all aware, there are a number of signage that exist currently in the park system. One of the components that we're looking to do is to create some consistency, so you'll get to see a lot of that here today. We're going to talk about signage, project team, timeline. I will give you a quick intro, and then I'll turn it over to our consultant team, MWM, which I'll be introducing here shortly. Just to give you a little bit of background, though, one of the components that we explored, if you would go back to earlier this year, or actually late last year, staff conducted a park design rotation list. From that rotation list, we identified a select number of design firms. So MWM was selected from that firm earlier this year, where their scope ultimately is, like I mentioned, improving the aesthetics of the signage plan. So that includes wayfinding, monument signage, interpretive signage, you name it, they're going to be talking about it today. So that's one of the feedback points that we'll be asking for today. But overall, it's going to ensure that there's consistency, improve sight lines, talk about emergency response. So there's a number of things that are all tied into the signage plan. As I mentioned, monuments, trailheads, wayfinding elements, those are the discussion points that you'll be hearing today. Some of the feedback that we received this past meeting was, and I want to highlight that, was to obviously include you guys in the process, which we definitely do see you as part of, as that sounding board, but also as a stakeholder in the sense of giving us feedback. So today, you'll see a number of options that will be provided to you that we want to get a general sense. By no means we're asking you to select 1, 2, or 3. We're trying to just get some general feedback from you. We can definitely complement a lot of these. So if you like something from 1, something from 3, feel free to integrate a lot of those concepts. And that's going to be really the case of tonight with other consultants as well, talking about other plans. So here's some questions to consider that we just wanted to spark conversation for, just to try to think as you start seeing these designs for the first time, or if you looked at the packet, ask these questions to our consultant team as we are interested to get your guys' feedback. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Chris Kelly, who is with MWM Design Group.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm with MWM Design Group. My name is Chris Kelly. I'm a project manager and landscape architect. We're a design firm located in Austin, Texas. We're about 70 people. We're multidisciplined, so we do permitting, survey, civil engineering, landscape architecture, and architecture. This project involved three primary members involved. So it's myself, Min Liu, who is the kind of the creative genius behind these designs, and then David Cazares, who's our principal in QA/QC. So this is the general timeline of the project. Back in May, we got approval from PARD to proceed with this project, and we met out on site with them in June to review 5 specific parks. And we used that time to really draw, both to see the needs of the parks from a signage perspective, but also to draw inspiration for design and elements like that. And then in July and August, we worked on the preliminary designs. So we created 3 concepts, preliminary concepts that we were able to send to PARD to give us feedback. This was to help determine the look and design of these concepts that we're creating. And then that brings us to where we are now, which is the preliminary review boards and commissions. So we plan to have the final review in November or December, and then close out this project by the end of the year. So some of the overall design philosophy that we applied to all of these concepts, and the influence, we took a lot of influence from the natural Texas ecology of Kyle, and then combined that with the classic European-inspired style. Something somewhat interesting about these signs is they're all able to be customized. So you can, as you'll see, there's an opportunity to create a new color or a palette for each of these signs depending on the site. And then also we could potentially customize the plant imprints that we have on the signs to make it a little bit more unique per site. If there's a specific plant that is native and abundant on a site, we might choose that for one site versus the other one. It's just, we wanted to leave that opportunity open if it's needed or requested. The history of the site, so that helps us connect each site to the history of that site while also maintaining the consistent standards that we'll be adding for all the signs across the city, or the park signs across the city. This also adds cohesive branding. So if we use the PARD colors, and that allows us to both provide to fit into the existing signage color palette, but also provide consistency with the future park signage of other stuff besides parks. And then longevity, these signs are designed to be easily implementable and maintainable long-term. So we're able to group the signs into 3 main categories. That's identification signage, informational signage, and wayfinding signage. So the identification signage, think of those as monument signs. Those will be located at the entrances of the parks or the secondary entrances of the parks off of the main roads. The informational signage, that'll be basically what it sounds like. It's just signage to provide information to the users of the site. So this could be, rules, regulations. We could have maps, interpretive signings, so maybe educational or historical messages associated with each site. And then wayfinding signage. So this is also like it sounds. It's just to provide directional wayfinding for both vehicular and pedestrian users of the site. All right. So the first concept, we're calling this one modern rustic. This design really blends the warmth of the rustic look with a modern aesthetic to create a design that both connects back to the history of the site, but also will stand up over time and look modern and contemporary. We use native materials on all these signs. We use native rock, and as you'll see on the other signs as well. And then modern accents, so that in this one in particular, we provided a steel plate that serves to provide a backdrop for the sign, and then also a concrete or aluminum sign face that also give it a modern and contemporary look. So this is the modern rustic sign. As you can see, we have the green portion is the steel back, and just by the way, any area we mention steel, we can substitute aluminum. It's an option. It's cost effective, but we use steel on this one in particular. So we have a steel backdrop there with the limestone base and the concrete sign face. And so there's a few options with like the plant imprint and for the construction of that. So we could potentially cut that out, or you could obviously paint it, but that's probably not our recommendation. But you could also just like fasten it, like have an actual physical piece that you attach and fasten to the sign, and this could give it potentially a 3D kind of look to it if it stuck out a little bit. So it's just stuff to think about. Same thing with the lettering. We could either indent that by cutting it out, or we could fasten something to it to give it that a little bit of a 3D look.
So what's that little emblem at the bottom? What's number 4?
That's the Kmart, the PARD logo, sorry.
No, the green. That little like. Well, obviously not going to the K. Said the little emblem.
I think that's the Kyle logo, the Parks and Rec logo, rather.
Yeah, that's the PARD logo.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a little, there's a bicycle and
Oh, it's the new logo,
Oh,
that's
okay.
why you might
and
not.
the water tower and.
Yeah, it was really small.
Yeah, we can, it is a little bit small. I think we have it bigger than some of the other ones, but we'll keep that in mind. All right, so then here's the informational signage. So this is just, for maps, information, rules, internal of the park and around the amenities to kind of just provide additional, to provide more functionality for the users. This has very similar or the same material palette and color palette as the identification signs. And then we have options with just without the limestone base for the interpretive signs there. These are the wayfinding signs. So this is the vehicular wayfinding in particular. So this also has the limestone base, the concrete, and the steel backing. And then this is the wayfinding for the pedestrians. So instead of a concrete face, we use an aluminum one here, just because it would be hard to install concrete at that scale. And another interesting thing I like about this sign is if you notice, the actual face of the sign is angled in the direction that we're pointing people. So it adds another little bit of subtle design to enhance the direction that we're trying to take or tell them to go, or if they need to go. And then this is the night scene for that. So we wanted to give a view showing the lights, potential for lights with this sign, so that this also adds another potential way to customize these signs. So you could use different colors for these lights. You could light up the plant imprint a certain color, or you could have the lettering in another color, or you could just have a color palette that you use to cycle through the various seasons or holidays, events, whatnot. Just adds another way that you could potentially customize these. All right, moving on to concept 2, we called this one Refined Heritage. So this one drew a little bit more inspiration from the European style that we mentioned earlier. So this uses a CMU walls with the natural stone veneer, and then a steel plate as a backdrop. So we have the historic look, but it's more of a modern construction method. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. We use native limestone boulder for these. These also have loose boulders, and they'd be rather large boulders, 2 to 3 feet in width. So that would give a different look than some of these other signs that we have here. And then modern accents. So we chose a aluminum surface for this sign, which we'll see next. All right, so this is the identification signs, and the brown portion on the top view there, the overhead view, the brown portion is the CMU wall, and it has a steel cap on top of it. And then the stone veneer would go wrap that. And then the actual sign face would be aluminum with a steel backing that would be inlaid inside of the veneer, so it actually is indented into the sign. But as you can see from the top view, this also presents an opportunity to kind of give it a 3D view. So on the left side there, that sign sticks out probably 6 to 8 inches, whereas on the right portion of that sign, it's pretty much flush. So this gives you opportunity to add a little bit of 3D and increase visibility at maybe it's a corner that's, or a sign entrance that's a little bit harder for the road to see. This gives a little bit more of an angle for them to pick up on the signage and you still can see it clearly from the front as well. So as you can see, the loose boulders there, those could be limestone or sandstone, probably limestone. but they're loose, so we could also add plantings in there if we wanted to liven that up a little bit and make it, soften it up with some vegetation. Here's the informational signage, so it's very similar in look and materials. And yeah, these will just provide the information internal to the park to the users. You know, some of the steel posts there on those signs, you know, that might be better suited as aluminum, but that's the kind of detail that we haven't finalized yet. And then here's the wayfinding signs for the vehicles. So this is also very similar in material and look. And then this just is designed to kind of have signage pointing in a direction on the side that's pointing, so it reinforces the direction that that amenity is located. And then this is the pedestrian wayfinding sign. So that sign on the left there, the Trail Decision, that's actually inspired by the PARD logo that you just asked about, Ryan, earlier. So we use the PARD logo to design that sign. So we thought that was a neat little touch there. And then it would be the aluminum post with the, I guess this one would be all aluminum if we substituted the steel for the aluminum. And then this is the night scene for that one as well. All right, concept 3, we're calling Texas Patina. This really leans into the rustic look. So we wanted to highlight the rugged and raw aesthetic found around here in the natural Texas landscape, using organic elements, color palettes, and materials. So we have a really earthy palette, and as I mentioned, like basically all organic materials for this sign. And then we have a raw weathering steel backdrop, or Corten steel, that provides a different look, and it also is designed to rust over time, and it creates its own story, you know, visually as it ages. Before I get off that, one thing to mention with the Corten steel is that first, it's going to take about a year to rust. That first year, does have potential to stain, so it's just something to keep in mind. If you pick something like sandstone underneath, you know, that's not going to be very noticeable, but if you use, let's say, limestone with that, you might have noticeable stains there. So just an option there would be to use aluminum instead, or to weather it at a time. And then we have the the sandstone base, and then the wood backdrop. Another thing about the wood, you know, that obviously may not hold up long term like some of these other elements, and you would probably want to stain that every 2 to 3 years just to keep the color up. So an option to substitute there, we could potentially use a concrete backing there with a form liner that would kind of give that wood look to it. And then we could also stain it to make it look as close to wood as possible. Here's the informational signs, so very similar again. And then on the interpretive signs, we were able to switch that up a little bit and add a little bit more unique look while still keeping the same color palette and overall kind of style of the signage. Wayfinding signs, once again, very similar, and these it's basically the same elements. And then this is the pedestrian wayfinding, which is a little bit different, but we were able to incorporate all the different materials into it. So you have the wood top portion, and then the steel post with the aluminum sign faces. And then this is night scene. All right, so these are all 3 of the signs kind of next to each other for you to kind of take them all in together and compare. And we also added the color palette, the PARD color palette on the right there to show how we drew inspiration from that and incorporated that into each of the signs. So as I mentioned before, we have potential to customize each of these signs with each of these colors really as as it's requested by the owner or stakeholders. Wayfinding sign position. So this is just an example to show where these signs might be located throughout a park. So if I can't really point, but along the major on the road there, Lehman Road, you'd have the identification signs, the primary and secondary identification signs, and then kind of around the amenities like the pool and the other elements in there, you would have the informational signage, and then throughout the trail, the internal roads and trails is where you would have the wayfinding signs. And so like the wayfinding could also provide a mile marker, so that would allow people to know how far along on the trail they are and how much further they have to go. This is just these are national standard or symbols, so these are just another way for us to provide additional information on these signs in a concise way. So we added some of these to the actual signs examples, but there's a lot more symbols out there for us to potentially add as needed by the signs. And then questions and feedback. So looking at all, you want to do this part?
Thank you, Chris.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is there a reason that we're not going with the blocks like are on our Kyle signs? Because the first one looks the most similar to like the signage that we have that we're using kind of for the city anyway. But that limestone is kind of more like a river rock dry stack look. And if we were to use limestone blocks like are on our Kyle signs, then we would have cohesiveness through all signs in the city, not just parks versus city signs.
Yeah, no, great feedback, and that's the exact feedback that we're trying to get. So there is, like you mentioned, there are existing signage, those monument signs into the city or gateway signs into the city that we did have some inspiration from, but because Parks and Recreation, we're trying to create that identity for parks. So how do we separate that? So whether it's incorporating that base material, that could very well be something that we feature here. One of the components that we're trying to be big on, just based on the native plant list that we have, and just really the emphasis of native itself, that we wanted to make sure that we're capturing that native stone. We can definitely explore that further within those I-35 corridors of how we have those gateway signs and see how that can be complemented in this space. And going back to this slide here, I mean, going to my initial point when I made it at the beginning, that's the feedback that we want to get in the sense of, do we have anything existing? Do we have a way to complement if there was things that you liked from option 2? Let's say option 2 is your favorite, but you like something from option 3. Just trying to get a general idea of how these 3 concepts spoke to you. Do you think we're going in the right path? Ultimately, the feedback that we'll be receiving today, we do have a scheduled meeting identified for City Council on the 21st, I believe, definitely here this next month in October. But for us to be able to have this conversation with council as well, but also sharing the feedback that we hear today, passing that over to council as well.
Is there any reason why we're not using the red and blue colors of the city for continuity?
Yeah, going back to the brand itself. So the city of Kyle Parks, so there's a City of Kyle brand, right? It's kind of that red, white, and blue. And then Parks created their own brand that has kind of that color scheme. So going back to even just going here, it's kind of hard to point, but the bottom right does highlight the new color scheme. So this was something that was conducted internally within our communications department. So there are several departments, and I say several loosely. There's only, out of all the departments in the city, I believe only 3 or 4 have their own branding, Parks being one of them. So you have library, I believe you have transportation, and PD, and then parks, and maybe you said water. So maybe that's 5. But one of those components too is how do we create, we feel as staff and really as the city itself, that parks, the credibility that not only that it has with the programs, the events, that you're able to carry that brand itself. So how do we distinguish or how do we separate that out? So that's the methodology to this. But again, that feedback is helpful if it's something that we want to be consistent across the board. Going to other signage that the city is currently undergoing from the roundabout signage, there are going to be some monument signs that will look different than this as well, where they can incorporate some of those elements. But again, just trying to separate parks from the city itself. That was at least the methodology behind this exercise that you see in front of you today.
This logo was born out of the PROS master plan process as well. You guys remember seeing that and as part of what was adopted and published. Also, wanted to mention the distinction between arriving to the city limits as a gateway versus you being in a City of Kyle park.
Is that, are we moving to a new logo? I know that City of Kyle used to be the pie capital of the world.
Right.
Have we decided on what we are, and have we incorporated that into this?
No, so the pie capital claim itself is something that the city is looking to get away from. So that's the reason why you don't necessarily see the pie aspect into the mix. To answer your first question, have we truly identified what that new branding is? I would say not yet. That is something that our communications department is exploring. But from going back to Parks and Recreation, from a Parks and Recreation aspect, with the adoption of the PROS master plan, as Mr. Lopez mentioned, this logo came about where we're able to bring out that branding of Parks and Recreation and then truly just carry that on moving forward. As far as modernizing or creating upgraded signage, that's really what we're contemplating today in the sense of what's that aesthetic that we want to see within the park system. Is it going back to Board Member Fishback's comment, right? The base material that you see on the gateways, but maybe popping the color that you see here on this color palette. That's sort of where we are right now, trying to truly identify that.
I also want to say the trail decision signs on that first one, that modern rustic, that have those different angles. I love that. Like, I think that is an excellent idea. Just having them face the direction that you're supposed to go. I think that's super smart. And like hiking, sometimes you look around and you're not totally sure. I just think that's super smart.
Awesome, thank you.
I like the green, and I respect that comment about how that wood is going to weather.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I would say just based on the 3 concepts here that you see today, staff did review these. I mean, we thought these all 3 options here are really good. There are some things, like you mentioned, Ms. Hermes, about the maintenance component of that. That is something that we also are trying to explore and be cognizant about, that whatever we put out there, we want to be mindful of the impact, not only from the aesthetics, but also the maintenance aspects of that as well.
Which one of these, can you rank them in the cost?
Good question. I will ask Chris to maybe speak of that. We haven't necessarily gotten to that point yet, but from my understanding, these are all pretty comparable.
Yeah, they're all very somewhat, they're in the same range of costs. There's going to be some elements that are, depending on like the steel. If you substitute aluminum, that's going to save you, on this one in particular, it's going to save you a lot of costs. But we haven't done a deep dive into cost yet, just very high level.
Do y'all run this through like ADA compliant, that the text you're using is visually, it can be seen by anyone with visual issues?
Yeah, so one of the components, and again, this is very, very high level right now, but as you start seeing these interpretive signage, there's the ability to have like Braille or different type of components to that end that you're able to feature in those type of signs. As far as the ADA component on where you have to place them on the sidewalks or the pathways themselves, there is a certain standard that does have to be specific. So that is being taken into account.
Okay. Well, I just learned there's a certain text that's not 508 compliant, which I would not have known because I don't have, I'm visually abled. So just something to take into consideration, that you don't want to prohibit people because they can't see the signs. Because we did recently had a incident in Button Creek where someone got bit by a snake, and the sign had like bluebonnets behind it, and they were visually impaired. So it was the sign that said warning of snakes or whatever. And then second question is, if it's lit up in the evening, does that create any issues for our dark skies initiative?
No, and that's great feedback. So in this photo here that you see, there is downlight that shines down. Another component to that is going to be the photometric. So it really depends on the lumens themselves and how far out they're actually shining out. But our thought is that they'll somewhat be angled, like a 45, where they'll be able to kind of be depicted down rather than them shooting up. So that is something that we're being mindful of.
And then that first sign, is that metal? Is that a metal sheen for the green one?
Yeah, I want to say if we go back to concept one, I want to say that was concrete backing, a concrete wall.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The gray.
Oh, the gray, yes, that's concrete.
Okay. Mainly asking if it's metal, then it could be super shiny if it's a sunny day and cause
Oh, no, yeah.
issues.
Yeah, that's concrete, but the green that you see is metal. But there's a way to incorporate aluminum, and maybe with the finishes, maybe there's something that
Eliminate
we
the
can
sheen.
explore, that sheen itself on the reflection aspect.
Well, I think that these are amazing. My preference would be concept 3, then concept 1, then concept 2.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
I liked 1, but with 3's, what did I write down? Wayfinding,
Okay.
how that was laid out.
Oh, with the cutout,
Yeah, I like that.
the interpretive.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other feedback?
And we'll move on to the next item.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I don't want to maintain 3. I don't want to pay to maintain 3.
Oh, with the woods. Yeah, and that could be something again that as Chris alluded to that we can explore. But appreciate the feedback.
Is
Sorry.
it safe to say that this, since we don't really have an identity, right? We're still storming and norming. This will set the identity of the Parks Department? Like whatever signage we use will be us?
Absolutely. And so that's one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning that we're excited for, because that's very well what it's going to do. It's going to start setting the identities for the park spaces itself. Once not only are we trying to improve the parks themselves with various amenities and improving the facilities themselves, but as you start introducing the community to these spaces, and then you start having these wonderful aesthetics, it just creates this new just aspect overall of the park itself. So we're truly excited of seeing what that does. But you're absolutely right, from the branding aspect, it for sure will do that.
So we've heard things about materials that are native to this region, and we've heard concerns about maintenance of the wood. And then on recommendations, we heard everything from 312 and 123. So we're kind of, I was curious if there was any more feedback from other board members on preferences and maybe why.
I think if we're looking at, like, that last slide said if you could combine them, like, I like the top part of 1. I like the stone flat stack look and the color blue on the second one. And 3 is just not for me.
So it's the base materials that you like from option
I
one?
would love if that, okay, so like the main part, not the boulders on the bottom, but the main part of the sign from 2 was the bottom of 1. Because I think that echoes the City of Kyle signs, but it's unique in its own way.
See
And
what
I
you're
like
saying.
the green and I like the blue too.
Oh,
The blue kind of also echoes the City of Kyle stuff, but the green is parks, so I get either one.
It's almost
Yeah.
like
I
that
want
CMU,
a
basically.
hybrid.
Yeah, good feedback.
We had similar feedback as staff, so Thank you. Any other feedback?
All right.
Thank you.
Next, we'll receive a report. Right, hold a discussion and provide staff direction for results and recommendations for the Public Arts Program Master Plan.
All right, so this one's going to be a little bit unique because we're going to be bringing Todd online. But while Jarrett does that, Chris Escoto, Deputy Director for the Parks and Recreation Department, today we're going to be talking about the Public Art Master Plan. We do have our consultant, Todd Brezzi, who is remote currently. I'm going to be leading this presentation, but I will be going to him for any questions or anything that I'm missing. And of course, if there's any questions that y'all may have that I'm unable to answer, Mr. Brezzi will be able to speak to that. And then Jared, if you can click on the monitor to move on to next slide. There we go. Thank you. So the overview today, again, we're going to be talking about the introduction, talk about the master plan itself, what is it that we're doing, what's that timeline. We do have early survey results that we've all shared with you all early on, but we're going to be touching on them specifically as far as the specific feedback that we received. Ultimately, why are we talking about public art to Park Board? That's going to be one of those components that we're going to be touching on today. And then just the general framework and feedback that we have. So as I mentioned, Mr. Todd Brezzi, Mr. Brezzi is a urban designer and planner. He is based out of Philadelphia. However, he has conducted several master plans throughout the state of Texas. Not only that, within proximity, he has actually done Austin and several in the DFW area. So he for sure is one of the leaders in the public art world. He's usually traveling all over the country, working on various mural projects, master plans, and so forth. And he's been conducting that since 2008. So what are we hoping to accomplish today? Out of this conversation, we're truly just talking to you about the plan itself. Where are we? But going back a few months, we were alluding to a public art master plan, and what does that truly look like for Kyle? This is the first master plan for the public art program itself. There currently isn't one. So this plan is creating that vision, those goals, identifying opportunities, issues, and truly just, or identify issues, setting priorities for those future work plans. So I mentioned at the previous item, the PROS master plan. The PROS master plan does account for a public art master plan of some type or call out the use of incorporating public art into the park system. And so out of that, knowing that there is no set parameters for public art in the sense of a documented process, policies, procedures, that's something that this plan will be delivering on, and it will be assisting staff in helping identify not only what are the procurement procedures when it comes to the body reviewing, how is that going to be coming forward to Park Board or Council and so forth, as far as the management of it, as well as identifying funding mechanisms. So there are several grants out there. So that's an entire exercise similar to the PROS master plan. That's what this plan is going to give us here. And so going into the stages themselves, currently we are within the plan development stage. There was a number of surveys that were collected earlier this summer that was part of the research stage. Our consultant did sit down with not only city council members, but also department heads and even some community members within the public art realm to figure out what is it that Kyle currently lacks, or what is the vision that Kyle wants to go into. So that mobilization stage, research stage, was key into what you're going to be seeing today from the feedback that was gathered. And currently we are starting to work on this plan from preliminary status where we are looking to adopt said plan by end of year. So that's just a general timeline to let you know kind of where we're at. So some of the survey results that were received, there was a question that was asked, what are the most important goals for public art in Kyle? 50% said to create memorable artworks that are associated with the identity of the city and its neighborhoods. I think this is a good, somewhat introduction into the analysis that we conducted within the last exercise. What is that identity that Kyle wants to have? So I think the public art component is a huge aspect to that, is as you start introducing art into these public spaces, it's going to be creating such atmospheres that people are not only going to be able to go to, but also experience, depending on the art itself, whether it's immersive or not. What you see here, 39% spoke about the uniqueness and also the ability to incorporate local artists. That's usually something that's common in the public art world, that you want to make sure that you start off with the local. So that was good to hear, especially knowing that there's several talented artists that at least we've heard that do live in Kyle, or at least are within this Hays County community. So what are locations that are best for public art in Kyle? This was a survey question where 42% mentioned utility boxes, and then 36% mentioned neighborhood parks. So neighborhood parks was number 2 out of that entire list, and it's one of the reasons why we're also here, but also how do we place making those park spaces? So here's some general feedback that identifies one that was somewhat surprising, at least to me, as you see towards the bottom, is trails and greenways. Typically, you do see public art of some type within those areas, but just based on the priorities, I believe there was a select number. It's like select the top 3 or select the top 5. This is how it came down.
So that's more than 100%. So I'm assuming there's multiple questions that these were pulled out of?
There was, there was multiple selections that somebody could select.
Okay.
So I think, like I mentioned, it was select the top 3. And Todd, I'm not sure if you're able to add to that, if you can say some words. If you're.
Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, sir.
First of all, good evening. Thanks for welcoming me to your meeting. I've enjoyed listening to it, and I'm happy to fill in where I can. That question in particular was structured, it offered about 12 or 15 choices, and respondents were allowed to pick 5. Not everyone picked 5, not everyone answered the questions, but that's why the numbers add up to more than 100, because respondents answered multiple times. Nevertheless, I think it provides a good sense of where people's priorities are. One reason they may have trails, for example, may have ranked low is because Kyle's trail system is still in its infancy. It's still growing, and people are still getting used to it. A lot of good projects underway right now, and so that, that may be a number that would change if you asked in 2 years from now or something like that.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd. And sorry, because we're going to be bringing Todd on and on, it's going to be a little bit of a delay here. There we go. All right, so additional questions were thoughts and concerns about public art in general. It is pretty common. It's public art. It's super subjective, that you get both spectrums. You got some that love it, and then you got some that don't like it. Or it's, hey, focus your dollars perhaps on fix the roads or do something different. So going to the funding aspect of it, there are different forms of funding for public art. Typically, it goes to HOP funds, or it goes to something different that doesn't necessarily impact the everyday tax dollar, so to say. So there are creative solutions for that, but that's going to be more of that education component that's going to be embedded from this plan. But the thoughts and concerns overall, people were pretty supportive. Going back to the community identity, I think that was one of those components that the feedback was this is a foundational aspect for that, for us to be able to instill this new identity, whether it's reflecting the history of Kyle through murals or through set pieces. There's all types of art, of course. So what you see on here, 66 did respond in support, and then what's highlighted here is 30% had some type of concern, not necessarily opposed to it, but they just thought there's different priorities. Maybe we should identify dollars to something different. Mostly related to cost is what that 30% was, where If I'm not mistaken, somewhere between 5-10% were truly like, hey, we don't want this. So that just to give you a little bit of capture of how that was identified. Additional thoughts and concerns, just again, the passion itself and the themes, wanted to instill and tap into the local artists, and how do we incorporate those within the parks just to give that increased aesthetic. And so going to this conversation today, why are we talking about this very subject for Park Board? Well, public art it's not just aesthetics. It does activate parks as a community hub, but also just starts identifying that identity, creating a sense of place, sense of pride. Once you start eluding all those components, one of the things that I do want to mention that at least I truly believe in is that public art can also serve as functional infrastructure. You could get really creative with the pavilions themselves. You can get creative with the benches. There's several forms that you'll even see in the meeting today that you're going to have the other master plans start incorporating these truly state-of-the-art facilities. So there is a way that you can get super creative from a funding aspect as well, that you're able to create this amphitheater, but because it brings this public art element, maybe you tap into something different to fund that. So just want to highlight that. But also, as I mentioned earlier, it does align with the PROS master plan. The PROS master plan does identify quite a bit this element itself. And just real quick, Todd, if you don't mind going mute, just because we have some echo going on. And the 3 frameworks for public art that we're going to be talking about today is having these 3 pillars, so to say. So I call it the 3-legged stool, that there's going to be 3 different areas that are going to be focused on in the plan. You're going to have the public art civic works component that talks about the parks, libraries, civic buildings, and roundabouts. And then I'll touch on the other areas here shortly. So the first one being that public art and civic works parks. Here's some set action plans that said, hey, identify public art opportunities in design plan phase. As you'll see today, there are a number of master plans in the agenda that we're going to be talking about. Well, how do we create or recommend certain or reserve certain areas within the park spaces themselves to identify public art in those components? How do we consider other areas, other opportunities within the parks themselves, from trailheads to being creative maybe with the surfacing of a basketball court? I mean, there's a number of ways that you can instill or you could create such hubs. So that's one of those pillars that are being incorporated, as well as public art and community. How do we partner with the rest of the community? So how do we partner with the schools, community organizations? Are there any temporary projects or exhibitions that could be had with bringing outside vendors into the city to be able to partner with? So it's just leveraging those partnerships is what the community aspect is here. And last but not least, the public art and economic development as a whole. So how do you create perhaps destination areas within certain regions or developments? Is there opportunities through partnerships with economic development, such as convention hotels, or you name it? There's a number of things that we can collaborate with other partners, but seeing it as an economic development boost, where you start tapping again into some of those hot funds, you start identifying some of those avenues. So working with the commercial development, one of the things that we're exploring is a mural program, but whether it's put on by the city or maybe by private developers as they start coming in, what are the parameters? We actually have had a few questions come about. There's a developer that wants to put a mural. Well, what's the process for that? Who needs to approve that? That's something that's in the works currently with this plan, identifying that process. But how do we start collaborating with such partners? So overall today, the discussion itself is truly to spark conversation, identify avenues or maybe opportunities for us to be able to tap further into. Maybe some ideas that you've seen from your readings or research from other municipalities that they've conducted. But what are perhaps some areas of priority that we should be focused on? And truly any questions that you may have about the Public Art Master Plan. That's all I have. Thank you.
secure public input and/or like completion of artwork by folks that live in this area? Like, is there an agreement, because it looks like that was higher up, that we have local artists participate in this? Like, is that a handshake? Is that gonna be written, that we are doing that, or is that just a recommendation?
Yeah, so this will be recommendations. And Todd, feel free to jump in there if you have anything. But one of the things that we'll be evaluating is based on the criteria itself from an evaluation aspect of the art. So if you put an art project out, there's evaluation criteria that we have to follow. So there could definitely be certain weight that prioritizes the program itself. It says, hey, if out of all the submissions, we're gonna weight 20% for local artists, whether the question there is, what's local? Are we just speaking to Kyle, or are we speaking to Hays County? So those are those further elements that we could speak to. But there is criteria that you can build in that you can reward just going off the public bidding process, where you can add said percentage of some type for you to be able to make that decision. And it just carries a certain weight higher for somebody that's local versus somebody that's in Philadelphia.
And are we doing that?
Currently, we're very early in the stage of public art. We've only put out one public art RFP. So we haven't yet, but we will in the future.
Because that's gonna be the problem, right? If you have a local artist, they may not have the funds to do all of the things to go in RFP, like a bigger group can, right? So you could eliminate some local artists.
Yeah, it really depends on the scope. So, I mean, art could be all over the place, right? I mean, when you talk about mural projects, that's one thing. But when you talk about sculptures, if you talk about budget, so one of the things that we're looking to do, and council actually gave that direction, is can we set some guardrails, or can we set some parameters that truly identify and leave it still up to the artist's creativity to be able to submit a package, but how do we be specific with the scope, with the criteria, maybe with the budget, identify, hey, here's the budget that we have. That way you don't have something from a local artist that's 20 grand and maybe something national that's 100 grand, and it's not apples to apples. So that's one of those components that we're truly looking to look at. And typically, depending on the project, right, you could probably go low bid and that individual gets that. But those are all those parameters. There's different ways to evaluate said art. Todd, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. As Chris said, this is a matter that's of concern in almost every community where I work, including Philadelphia. And there are a lot of ways a plan sets out policies to look for it. Look at this issue. One of the important things is think about the kinds of opportunities, the kinds of commissions that a program is offering, so that they're at a level or of the nature that artists in your city or artists in your region will apply for. It's sort of like trying to look to see, what levels are artists working, what kinds of things are they interested in, what kinds of projects do they tend to do, and then trying to align the projects that you seek with those skill sets, so that the opportunities match, the qualifications that artists have. That's a really important strategy. Another way we look at it, we call it laddering, which is then having more and more challenging opportunities so artists can grow in their work as well. One of the things I haven't really talked about with anyone in Kyle, but I'll certainly be thinking about is there are a number of cities in the region, not including Austin, that are sort of in a kind of universe, a similar universe, San Marcos, Georgetown, Round Rock, where, through collaboration with other cities, you may be able to find ways to leverage your ability to support regional artists by thinking about how you promote projects within your little network and so forth. So there are a lot of ways to kind of shape a program so that the artists in your community and your region are getting a good shot at the work. That's not to say there sometimes aren't opportunities elsewhere, because that's how artists locally can learn by working with those folks and engaging with them, and so it's a matter of balance.
Real quick, as y'all speak into the mic, just make sure it's close to your lips, and then when you're done, if you can make sure you turn it off and just put it away. Just a reminder.
I was curious, I'm imagining you're getting feedback from Arts and Cultural Board as well.
Absolutely, we definitely are. We actually meet with them on a monthly basis and give them updates of this entire process that you see here. So they have been a part of the conversation throughout. They get, again, monthly updates. Not only does the chair, we have our monthlies with them, but the board themselves has been receiving said information this past month. 2 weeks ago, actually, they did have the same report you see here provided to them. And sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a couple of things. Just speaking to kind of these questions that are up here, how could it be incorporated so it complements rather than conflicts? Given that Mary Kyle Hartson is like a heritage park, right? We have that designation, probably keeping that as classic as possible and not including a lot of like out there stuff would be great in my opinion. And then if we're looking to create memorable art, right, express uniqueness, we are also potentially looking at people coming to take pictures with said memorable and unique things. And so trying to put them in locations that don't make traffic horrible, and we don't have people, running into the street to try and do stuff and being, acting a fool because they want that perfect social media picture would be great.
Yeah. Thank you. Good points. One thing that I wanted to add that I could say that I've learned through this process itself, and I've actually had Todd mention it, is there's not one public art master plan that's the same. So everything is unique to that community. So that's one of those components that we are looking to integrate within the Kyle Parks network itself. Is how do we make sure not only the feedback that we're receiving is Kyle, but the plan itself will be reflective of that. So that is something that it's not necessarily common, but it's common in the public art world. But if you look at the PROS master plan itself, some of those are kind of similar renditions that you see in multiple communities. But this one will be specifically outside of the public feedback, of course, but they will be speaking different language than San Marcos, as an example. So that's one of those components that we've learned. But thank you for that feedback.
I actually just thought of something else as well. So we have within the city of Kyle a whole bunch of TERS zones, right, where they get to take some of our taxes for things that happen in those specific areas. If we're putting public art into those areas and increasing the number of people that go to those areas, does that perhaps give us any leverage to renegotiate some of those that maybe were negotiated whenever we didn't have as much leverage to get a favorable tax structure for those businesses in those TERS zones? Looking at you, HEB.
I see what you're saying. Go ahead, Todd.
I'm not sure I followed the question exactly, but TRZ zones will be mentioned in this plan because they overlap with many of the areas of the city that are priorities for economic development. The documentation of that from the Economic Development Department lists 6 or 7 different destination areas in the city, which the plan will say should all be places where there's public art. If it's a destination for businesses and tourists and employment, it should be a destination for public art. And TRZ funding, it's project-based funding. It can be, reevaluated from time to time, and it's very flexible compared to other kinds of funding potentially. And from my understanding, if a municipality desires, it is an appropriate use for that funding to be spent on public art. So one of the things we might look at is in areas of Kyle where there is development that's being supported through TIRZ funding, through infrastructure, site preparation, things like that, that people who benefit projects as part of what they give back to the city for the benefits that they're getting. So that is something we will consider in the plan, and of course, the city leadership will have to evaluate that idea, but I think that's something we will put on the table to discuss.
That answer your question?
So I'm gonna think out the box, just something crazy. Have you ever thought about asking like Hayes and Lehman's art class to like try to?
Yeah, I feel like you're in my mind. But yes, we definitely have. So one of the things that we're currently working on, and we haven't necessarily been truly successful on to right now, but one of the comments or one of the survey results here says, what locations are best for public art? Utility boxes came up. Utility boxes is one of those projects that we are looking to lead soon after the adoption of this master plan, where in my prior community, we worked with the school district to create those pieces of art that's being wrapped around the utility boxes. So I have started to engage with Hayes and Lehman in particular, those high schools, those art programs. I've really only been successful getting one art teacher, but it's something that we're just looking to increase that relationship, and maybe right now is not the time, but as this public art program grows, we are looking to reserve certain boxes that surround the schools themselves, like on Lehman or on BB, that make sure that, hey, we're able to hold some for future program elements like that. But that is something that we're currently working to do. So it's not necessarily outside the box in the way that it's not out of reach. It is something that we are looking to integrate the school district in, because that's another partnership. That's another instilling into the community itself. There's also the element of how do you even have community colleges in the mix as well. So we haven't necessarily explored that fully, but we do know they're out there, but it's just now about making those connections, those relationships.
Which school have you had success with?
I believe it was Hayes is who I heard back from.
So other than like murals and statues and, some functional type art, what all is considered public art?
I'll let Todd answer that, being the expert.
So those are three big categories right there. Sculpture, murals, functional, or what we sometimes call integrated work, that's like say a shade structure or something that's integrated into a building, or might be part of a seating area or a plaza. And those are really where you have a lot of opportunities in the parks, actually, those functional or integrated type pieces. There are other kinds of projects that are maybe a little less common, sometimes projects with light, sometimes projects with sound. I'm working in another community where we're trying really hard. It's a rural community. They have a lot of people who work with fabric. And so we're trying to figure out how to have fabric artists create work that will be displayed around town. So, things like banners or canopies, things like that. So there's really a lot of different kinds of medium. But I think in, Chris showed a slide that described a lot of different kinds of public art. There are a lot of types mentioned there, like trailhead shade structures, sensory gardens, community gardens, friendship trails, environmental art, by the way, gardens, things which work with natural materials. Anyway, outdoor classrooms, splash pads, amphitheater, basketball courts, entry features. That list that was on that slide is actually copied from the PROS plan. Those are ideas that the PROS plan suggested to look at for public art in Kyle's parks. So I think that is, in terms of how public art might work in parks, those are a good range of ideas to explore.
There's other arts that we're currently working on, such as like chalk art. So there's just that kind of immersiveness. I'm not sure if you've kind of seen the 3D chalk art. So that's another one of those elements that you could get truly creative on. Somewhat of a mural, but there's different
Well, I
mediums.
was thinking, in Lehman, we have an amazing mariachi band, and they're like award-winning, and they're like some of the best in the state. It would be neat to incorporate, and that's something maybe we could work with San Marcos, because Texas State has an award-winning mariachi band. I don't know how to incorporate mariachi music into public art, but I think that there's opportunity there.
Yeah, performing arts. I mean, performing arts is definitely part of one of those elements. This plan itself, we'll probably highlight some of that, but it's not going to go too deep into the various forms of performing. But you're absolutely right that is another form of art that we even instilled it this past weekend with our 5K event. They launched a mariachi band at the starting line. So it's one of those components that we do look at it and emphasizing the performing element as well.
I will say, in Philadelphia, I worked on a project. So what we like is bands, music and things, theater groups, dance, those are often the kinds of arts you might encourage through other kind of channels than public art. Literally, there might be cultural grants or performance grants or things like that. An important thing about public art is that it is original and it's specific to the place where it's located. That means you're not going to find the same thing in every city, and that it has some kind of connection to the place and it has meaning because of that. And so I was going to say in Philadelphia last year, I worked with a developer who wanted to put a shade canopy in his plaza in the city. And what we did is we commissioned a sculptor to build a shade canopy, but also commissioned a musician to compose an original score about the neighborhood where the canopy is located. And so every day at noon, I think if you go there, you can hear this like 20-minute original piece of music that is that's about the neighborhood. It's sort of a collage of people's voices and music, and but it's a really intriguing sort of kind of backdrop for the plaza. So that could be a way to include music in a public art piece. To kind of make it something unique and special to that place, that's performed for that place, and then kind of experienced, because it's played back every day or every once in a while.
It doesn't have to be literal either. I mean, they wear fabulous costumes, and the skirts themselves can inspire like awnings or little banners for our street poles or something like that. Like, it doesn't always have to be music to reflect kind of a mariachi flair to it. So kind of thinking about it out of the box.
True.
I'm sure those costumes and those fabrics are quite beautiful, and so they can be really inspirational. Either they're murals or, I've seen fabric pieces that are sort of treated so they become permanent. They're stiffened, they become permanent, they become like a three-dimensional mural. But that's a really good idea. I mean, the color, the movement of the fabrics, when people are performing or dancing, is, it's spectacular, right?
Yeah.
So that you're right. You're absolutely right. That can inspire different kinds of projects.
Thank you.
Any other feedback?
I was just going to say, in general, the city doesn't use the resources of Texas State as much as I believe they could. And this is another example.
Yeah, no, great feedback. And that is something that we are looking to explore and really increase that collaboration and partnership with Texas State, not only from citywide, but specifically Parks and Recreation. How do we link with that department? So that could be something that could be further explored. Any other feedback? No? Oh, I just want to say thank you, Todd, for joining remote.
Thanks, Todd.
Chris will keep you posted about our progress and further conversations. Thank you.
Move on to agenda item 4.
Receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff direction on conceptual design and engagement strategies for Steeplechase Park and Lake Kyle Park. Will Atkinson.
We're just loading the presentation up right now, but I'll pass over to Will.
Thank you. So tonight, we have the first of 2 of our 4 parks that we like to refer to internally as our big 4, our 4 original parks. The Dunaway Group was selected as part of our RFQ rotation for the park design and construction RFQ that we had late last year. And we asked them to put together a presentation on how to holistically redesign both Steeplechase Park and Lake Kyle. And you will see 2 early preliminary concepts for each park. And with that, I will be happy to pass it over to Mr. Brendan.
There we go.
Okay. In business. Good evening, Parks Board. My name is Brendan Woodstruck with Dunaway, and I will jump right into the fun here. We are fortunate to be working with the Parks Department on the master plans for Lake Kyle Park and Steeplechase Park. We are quite early in a very fast-moving process to define the vision for these. This presentation is the first major public showing of our design concepts. We've had the opportunity to interface to some degree with community members, but a larger portion of community engagement is to follow this. So tonight, really excited to get y'all's input on directing these concepts, refining, and how we take these to the public moving forward. We will also be following up with council and following this meeting, and then coming back to y'all with refined, final recommended presentation for both parks in early 2026. I already introduced myself, the team at Dunaway. I'm a landscape architect. I've been practicing in Austin for 13 years now. My team here locally, working closely with Kelsey Ross and Shelby Horton, I want to give them special recognition as major players. We're also joined by our in-house civil engineering team to make sure that we are providing concepts that will be engineering proof. I'm going to spoil a little of the ending, but there's a lot of floodplain involved. Coming in very broadly, what we heard about building up these master plans is we wanted something that we want parks that are uniquely Kyle. We recognize, especially with Lake Kyle Park, that we need to build in flexibility between the everyday use of these parks and the big event, the Kyle Fair, the movies at the lake. And in the case with both of them, striking this balance between human activity and conservation activity. The watersheds, both ecological and social, are really critical on these 2 sites. And again, we are building off of the PROS plan. You've heard that mentioned in the other presentations, a map derived from that PROS plan. These are both designated as community parks. We were able to distill a lot of early recommendations that set us on the right footing for this project from that plan. Shade, 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 the desire to create community assets, and also recognize that the struggle with building up the disparity in access and opportunities between the east and west areas of I-35. I spoke to the watersheds a little bit. The social watershed, you've heard about the Vibe Trail, some of the presentations tonight. The Vibe Trail is slated to run through both of these parks, actually connect the 2 parks to each other. That multimodal system of transportation is going to be a huge boon to this area. We wanted to acknowledge the 5-minute walk shed shown here in pink, connecting a number of residential communities. 3 elementary schools are within a 5-minute walk of these 2 parks, particularly Steeplechase, really nestled there between Lehman and the idea and Fuentes, is a really prime location for looking at the Vibe Trail and the park's improvements as sort of an extension of safe routes to schools. And the floodplain. Most of both of these parks is floodplain. Those of you who were around in 2015 know that pretty well. The Lake Kyle Park, that was pretty much looked just like that, except it was muddier in our section. But these are both, as I mentioned, critical areas along the waterway. Your parks are very important homes, not just for local wildlife, but for migratory wildlife and building the rich ecology of the Kyle area. You guys know these parks. I won't belabor them in length, but just to speak briefly about Steeplechase Park, this is 45 acres, informal baseball field, soccer pitch, dog run, significant conservation areas which are being maintained by PARD. But this is the city's only disc golf course, and recently had an extremely successful ribbon cutting for the new playground. I think if we can get a tenth of the people who attended that event to engage on the public engagement section of this, we'll be in great shape on numbers. Really, truly impressive crowd for that. On Lake Kyle Park, 118 acres, mostly Plum Creek Conservation District, water management area. This is where you host the Kyle Fair. This is where a number of other smaller events happen. Also, again, with significant areas designated as conservation areas. Adjacent to the Four Seasons Farm Park, which is also parkland dedication, and we'll come back to the connection to that. PARD maintains a maintenance operation on this site. The maintenance yard is on this site. Also investments in playground, the recent fitness center, outdoor fitness center is the latest addition to this park. So to speak a little bit about our process as we looked at what was happening on the parks and what wasn't happening, and looking at areas where things are, maybe some places too many things are happening in the same place and they get in each other's way, and you're trying to watch a soccer game and a frisbee is flying at your head. Or you're trying to do conservation and we're walking all over the roots of heritage trees. But in that 45 acres, there's also a lot of areas that are not programmed. One of our observations with this park in particular is that the dog park area, the sports fields area, act in a very disconnected fashion from one another, despite being adjacent to each other. The same analysis of Lake Kyle will tell you that a large part of this park is temporal. That light orange we're showing is the approximate footprint of Kyle Fair, excuse me. So there are events at which the active area of this park really swell, but on a day-to-day basis, that area is being used very little. You do have active fishing, birding, the playground, and other gentle hiking, and the new fitness activities going on. So I'll pause here to say we are showing you two concepts for each of these two parks. In my mind, in a lot of our team's minds, and to some degree, these are the two parts of the same park. We see them as linked. And we are showing concepts that are meant to explore the discussion about how we want this park to be. What is the overall character of this park? And we're going to set the table with a little bit of character imagery. I've underscored the critical natural areas and conservation already going on with both of these parks. We want some of the imagery to reflect that. We also want these parks to be destinations and to really signal themselves as destinations from the street. Right now, neither of these parks has a particularly strong street presence. If you know where to go, you're going there. They do not necessarily go out of their way to announce themselves, although the monument signage stole my thunder a little bit on that. Some of these images here, Confluence Park in San Antonio, many of y'all know, and the Shangri-La Botanical Gardens in Orange, Texas, in the upper right, a favorite of mine. And looking at the mix of how can we introduce some architectural elements into these programs, outdoor classrooms, bird blinds, outdoor nature play elements. These can be highly customized and architectural, and thinking big about what that could be. And then ultimately inserting a level of fun into that, and into the signature elements here. Particularly, I love the Perot Museum frogs. I think show up in a lot of presentations. A really well-loved public art installation. So here I will get into our diagramming of the two concepts. We'll start with Lake Kyle Park, and I'll be able to walk through both parks, and happy to go back. I know this is a ton to digest, and you've got 2 more parks after this, so pacing ourselves. Concept A, really, I think the best way for me to explain this is that this is the defined edge concept. This is the concept where we really say there is a portion of this park that is intensely human activity, and then there is a portion of this park that is intensely humans step away and let those be natural corridors. So in this one, the big move is that defined edge. It is this major event lawn in the center, anchored by, indicated in number 1 here, a band shell element that would be, with the architectural statement, the destination to draw daily users into the park, and also be serviceable for Kyle Fair and other events to be held at the park. The conservation and trails approach on this is a very, very light touch. We look at, shown in brown here, a series of small nature trails. These would be unpaved, maintained, kind of rustic trails that allow for a level of activity. They're not necessarily going to be accessible routes, but they're the lightest footprint upon the earth. The parking strategy for this keeps the existing parking along Lehman, but introduces 2 overflow lots shown in the dark blue. These could be grass pave or open cell paver, or potentially unpaved parking that would be built in a way that it can be formalized for major events, for parking, for load-in, but it wouldn't necessarily read as a parking lot in an office building in the traditional sense, because we don't want to occupy that much of the square footage for that. The entry and neighborhood procession of this roughly stays where it is. That axis of on Lehman is the primary entrance, and the activities are really focused in a linear procession between that main entrance and the existing playground to, as I mentioned, that band shell. And the band shell is really the signature move here. The events would be generally built around this main oval lawn. There's overflow area that we are counting for the footprint of Kyle Fair and other events as they are today, being built around that central area. And finally, the part operations yard in this one would receive a bit of a facelift, make it a more secure facility, fenced around that, and with special attention given to the neighborhoods directly adjacent to it and the screening of activities from those. And a look at some of the character imagery. I've talked about these architectural bird blinds that you might encounter walking through the nature trails. Extending the Four Seasons Farm Park becoming a nature play and the neighborhood park, and really that nature play setting the character for that portion of the park. And then some architectural examples of band shells and event lawns. Excuse me. In contrast, concept B is more about transition. The big move here is actually connecting the neighborhood to Lehman Street. And in this one, the Four Seasons Farm Park becomes a more active neighborhood park with a very direct connection to the entrance at Lehman via a signature bridge built over Lake Kyle. And then in addition to that, we look at a paved pathway around the entire periphery of this park, including behind the PCC dam structure, to create a series of concentric walking loops and really emphasize the connection of the neighborhood to the east and south, to the neighborhoods to the west and north. In this concept, we take a more nuanced approach to conservation. In this case, perhaps paradoxically, some of the concrete pathways will actually assist PARD in their conservation efforts by clearly delineating areas of different mow techniques and encouraging the public use of the concrete spaces and a softer touch on some of the nature paths. This concept does envision more ADA access within the conservation areas through paved pathways, but generally speaks to the same light-footed approach to the conservation areas that was in the first concept. Parking here, we do not introduce any parking into the park. We merely extend the parking along Lehman. That reduces the footprint of parking in the park. However, it also decreases the amount of park fronting the street and kind of makes parking a larger barrier. So there's lots of ways to look at parking, but we recognize with this level of connectivity and the growing number of events at this park, we're going to need to find a way to park it. And so we're looking at what is the best and least obtrusive way to do so. One thing I want to point out about this one is that we do change where the primary entrance is to the park. This one there at 15 and 16 creates a new entrance and aligns that with Masonwood Drive, which would be an opportunity for some architectural gateway that you can really see from the neighborhoods looking in and really assign that as the new pathway. And an idea that could probably be added to either of the two concepts, but we're placing it in this one, is actually moving, in the long run, moving PARDS, maintenance operations, out of the existing building and allowing that to grow into a more full-use visitor center and build another building for PARDS operations at the site of the maintenance yard, and allowing the back-of-house functions for PARD to be more consolidated and not the first thing you see when you come into the park. Again, we really leaned heavily into a couple of those pictures, but I wanted to show you an example. This is the Trinity River in Fort Worth. That bridge structure speaks to a level of architectural clarity in an area that is entirely floodway, to illustrate that these kinds of structures can be built in a floodway with the proper engineering. I won't dwell on this slide because this is more of a takeaway, but we provided a concept A and concept B kind of compare and contrast slide. And the big picture here is that strong delineation between active and passive uses, the degree to which we're connecting the Vibe Trail versus building loops around the Vibe Trail, and the degree to which we're concentrating civic activity within a finite area of the park versus letting it bleed more gently out into a larger park footprint. Switching gears to Steeplechase, just up the road, you'll see at the bottom of this slide on the lower right-hand corner the proposed easement to allow the Vibe Trail to connect these two parks to each other. Again, in concept A, this is the more active use. This is the vision of the park that leans into this being more of a regional community athletic facility. So the big idea here is to consolidate and combine sports facilities, whether that's adding more baseball fields, removing baseball fields and adding more soccer fields, consolidating the activities that you have for athletics, and adding lighting and putting seating and restrooms and really orienting that around and building this up to a facility that can sustain league play, that can sustain youth sports, have extended hours, and make that the real focal point of this park. Conservation and trails. In both of these, the conservation areas are roughly the same. We do in this concept recommend a modest realignment of the Vibe Trail pathway to become that hard edge, as you see here between the sports fields and the areas of little human activity, balancing out proportionally the park between conservation and activity. Parking, I won't really speak to in great detail on either of these concepts because that's already underway. The Parks Department is expanding the parking along Kim Way, and we'll be providing new trees and sidewalk access connecting the park, so in the parking lots. So both of these will hew to the good work that the Parks Department has already done there. And then entry, a little bit speaking toward the sports fields, it really becomes the epicenter of this park. You'll see in the other concept, the center of gravity of the park shifts a little bit, but in both cases, feeling the need to really beef up the presence from Lehman and Halley Drive there at its southeast corner. I need to mention disc golf. There's two, we present to you two concepts for the short-term future of the disc golf course. In this one, it is reducing realigning the course and reducing it to 9 holes only, allowing those to be larger holes that can have less of a footprint and less harmful impact on the creek bed. The current course crosses the creek bed 4 or 5 times. A lot of the pins are very, very close to the creek edge. You're seeing a lot of foot traffic in a sensitive riparian zone. just trying to find the piece of plastic they threw in it a few minutes ago. And then lighting is the last thing I would like to touch on these two concepts. With the introduction of the more codified athletic facilities, this would come with lighting the basketball courts, the addition of potentially lighted sand volleyball, the reintroduction, I should say, the addition of lighted pickleball courts and lighting the baseball or soccer fields as the main central point of that park area. And of concept B, and we're concept A, again, this is the transitional edge. We eschew the hard edge of the vibe trail between conservation and active areas. This one focuses the epicenter really on the recreation activities, the existing playground, building out from there, and looking at the introduction of more shade pavilions, encouraging more use of the park by renting out for a party, for a birthday, for special events, and really making that the hub. Shown here in number 5 there, kind of building in a central lawn and putting that activity in that portion of the park. This conservation practice in this park, similar to what we showed with Lake Kyle, is a more hands-on approach to putting people in nature in a stewardship role. We codify more paved pathways. We invite more human activity into the conservation area, but we do so in a way that helps organize and assist with the maintenance through the key placement of those pathways to encourage the right kinds of maintenance and clarity for PARD staff. In this one, the entrance is more where it is today, which is really at the parking lot, at the splash pad and the play area. That is really the kind of front door of this, although the need for signage from Lehman persists in both. We do continue to maintain an 18-hole disc golf course in this. It's going to be a much tighter course. That course would not be the course you have today. It would still be a realignment. PARD is already working with the disc golf community on short-term alternatives to that layout, but we would be looking to try to find ways to place pins in ways where you're not throwing so close to the creek, to minimize creek crossings, and to minimize conflict areas like we see today between some of the areas for spectators in the shade watching soccer and football games and the disc golf course. This is an image in the left here with the disc golf and conservation that I like to highlight. This is not from Steeplechase Park, but it really, in one image, illustrates all the things you're trying to do in one space there and how those can be balanced. And finally, breaking out the two big ideas of those parks. That was a lot. I'm going to return to a side-by-side of concepts A and B for Lake Kyle Park, and I have the same slide for Steeplechase Park. Happy to go through either of these as we have questions. And I wanted to try to move through this as quickly as possible so we could spend more time hearing from you. Thank you.
On concept B for the Lake Kyle Park, have we done a traffic study on moving the entrance? Because big events in that neighborhood right there is a nightmare.
We have not. That's a great feedback for us to look at as we develop these. You already do have the apron accesses there, and you already do use those for overflow for events. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but we will look into the impacts of that.
Okay. And maintenance-wise, is one easier to maintain than the other?
There's a lot in that question. I think that what I highlighted about putting the paved trails in the conservation areas actually came from the Parks Department. We brought the idea, and they noted that, as I said, paradoxically, having that paved area might help their staff understand the difference between a full no-mow area and a wildflower seeding area. We're able to transition those areas. Right now, they've got them kind of flagged off, and mistakes get made and the wrong things get mowed. So there's a simplicity to that. There's a clarity. But conversely, you add more concrete cracks, there's a long-term maintenance tied to that. So I would hesitate to say one is easier to maintain than the other. They're kind of, they both have their drawbacks and advantages in that regard.
Is there a plan that y'all prefer?
Because we're still in the early stages of feedback, we don't really have a preference. We wouldn't bring anything to you all that we had a serious allergy towards. Looking at these, I don't think there's a significant jump in O&M from one concept to another, but thank you for asking that question. I wish more people thought in those terms. But yeah, I see that both of these uses are really conducive to the site and maintenance friendly.
I'll just add as well, so one of the components, or truly the exercise that we're doing here, is really starting to have that conversation and get Park Board to start tailoring this in a way. What is it that we feel the community may aspire to be or may aspire to see out in the park system itself? And so the feedback that we get today, unlike the usual process that we get your feedback, then we go to council, this feedback is going to go to the public itself, that we're going to be able to get the details today, and they're going to get to see firsthand introducing some of these concepts to them. So, hey, how do we feel about a bridge? You know, that's one of those components that if, hey, let's keep the bridge, or maybe the bridge is too much, too soon. Things like that we're trying to instill. But overall, going back to my comment earlier, bringing Park Board to be able to have these design influences, so to say, for us to be able to instill this into the community.
If I can add to that, I think we've intentionally brought you, diagrams, almost cartoons. And I think we're trying to push these parks in two different directions. There's a lot of ways where we could combine these concepts or pull pieces out. They just don't need to be wholesale. But we wanted, for the purposes of a dialogue with you and a dialogue with the community, to provide clarity in the concepts to begin that discussion.
The first one, A, feels like Kyle now, and B feels like where we're going. I can see that if we do A, y'all are back here in 5-10 years looking to do some of the things that are in B right now. And if we just go for it, we're saving ourselves money in the long term and creating kind of something that we can maintain instead of something we have to continually like reimagine.
I think the bridge is probably not a great idea, because if you go to, I shouldn't say most of the parks, but a good portion of the parks, there's a ton of bottles, cans, bottles that people just, I might have repeated that twice, but I don't know if I would trust people to necessarily respect the lake and not it then fill up like some of our creeks have. And granted, it's in more of a public spot versus some of those creeks where you could just toss it out of your vehicle. But I would hate to see that we do. I think I just saw something about otters in Lake Kyle. There was a handful of them. I would hate to see that we discourage that because we've made more access to humans to do what humans do in nature. And then secondly, the neighborhood across from the park, like Ann mentioned, the Layman can get pretty congested pretty quickly. Does that neighborhood have a HOA? Like, are we gonna get into parking wars if we have events and then they start blocking it off per their HOA or whatever? Like, do we have to engage with them, period?
So part of there's a lot of things there that I can answer, but we have been communicating with not only the Steeplechase community, just adjacent to Steeplechase Park. We haven't necessarily started communicating with somebody from the HOA across Lake Kyle, but that is something that we do envision working with our communication team to be able to get those communication channels out there, whether it's in a public forum type of setting, survey, whatever that may be, to start getting some of that feedback. As far as special events go, one of the things that we did this year for Kyle Fair was that we transported, or we had shuttle services from outside facilities where we shut down certain roads along, I believe it was Amberwood, and other sections of street there, that we did have to work with PD, we did have to work with our transportation team in Public Works to be able to close down certain streets, and there was a little bit of a collaboration there. I did hear whether there was a TIA or some type of traffic analysis conducted. Right now, we're a little early in that stage, but as we start developing some of those actions, and if it in fact is something that we're trying to highlight as part of the planning process through permitting and so forth, we will have to start conducting some of those impact analysis from a traffic standpoint.
And I want to give some kudos to Dunaway for thinking about Four Seasons differently. That park felt so disconnected, and it's been undeveloped for quite a while. But you know, providing an accessible path to the park is something that I hope that they appreciate. We might get feedback for concern that it's too much access, and thinking about things like Cal Fair and an alternate route in might be concerning to them. They might look at the first concept and say, you know, we've got a lot of soft surface trail. Maybe we don't want a bridge, but maybe we want more ADA accessible pathways through the conservation area. So there could be a hybrid of that. But I'd be interested to get their thoughts and feedback on that. In response to the bridge, I appreciate that comment as well, thinking about the new activity that's introduced. The only high traffic bridge that we have in our system that I can think of would be at Heroes Memorial Park. I will say folks are pretty responsible with their usage of that park. It remains relatively clean, and what we get are typically floatables from drainage as opposed to litter. But this is an exciting part of the process, and as Mr. Scotto mentioned, bringing you all in early as that early sounding board before it even goes out to the public. We heard you all loud and clear last meeting and want to get involved and participate and workshop these things with us, and so far we've had tremendous feedback.
And I had a couple other thoughts. So they have the nature trail that goes off of the Button Creek Pocket Park. It has one bird blind. I think it's a 3/4 mile, but it gets real hot real quick. So I think bird blinds are cool, but in the summer, I don't know how much like it will make it more usable because it's just like the sun's unbearable. And then secondly, this particular area has, and maybe this is something future state, but it has bores. So like, are we taking that in consideration too? If we build this, what is going to happen with, I know they're evasive or invasive, whatever. How do we handle that?
Sorry, I was saying they're evasive and
Okay.
invasive.
Well, I hit them both. But they are a problem, particularly in that area. So how do we prevent them from, if we put this in there, from damaging it, period?
I could answer that. You want me? Yeah, I mean, one of those components, our wildlife management program, is something that Mr. John Davis is in tune with every day. I mean, there's not only is there a set email address that if there's any sightings, any reportings that are had, John is on top of it. It is something that we have somebody on contract for. As we start getting additional activity in any park, it's something that we do explore and deploy set traps as we did this past year. As far as working with the design, that could easily be something that we could work with our consulting team, figuring out what type of recreational amenities, whatever type of amenity is instilled and installed. How do we account for that? Because you are right. I mean, they could easily destroy certain areas, but how are we intentional with a lot of that? Granted, I mean, it is wildlife. It is something that, I mean, they do wildlife things. So from that component, there is going to be an element of surprise, so to say, but we do have strategies behind it on how we eliminate such or deter from activity.
I appreciate that. I didn't know about the bores, but that speaks to a larger thing that we have discussed in the team is just the general hardening of the facilities in a floodplain. If we're talking about adding lighting and adding ADA access, we need those to be something that can be inundated. The electrical systems will need to survive an inundation. The bird blinds would have to be. So there's a level of that, and a level of cost and maintenance that is going to be important that the team consider moving forward.
I have a thought about the parking as well. I heard other board members mention concern about parking in those neighborhoods that are near it, and the shuttle is definitely great. But Project A, you kind of have to drive to it. Project B, maybe you're not driving to it. Maybe you're using that trail to get there. because there's lots of neighborhood connections to the various vibe points. So maybe you're riding your bike to Kyle Fair, or maybe you're dragging your kid in a little red wagon. I think it kind of could help alleviate some of those parking issues because you don't have to use your car to get there.
Happy to move us on to steeplechase. If other ideas on Lake Kyle come up, please don't hesitate. So same exercise. This is A and B for Steeplechase Park.
It feels like a lot's going on with the space. Like it went from a bunch of green space, which it is underused, and part of it is because it's so hot. It's hard to utilize. I would lean towards A, just because it's a little less busy, because you want it to be used, but it just seems like a lot. Like, how do you maintain that with the multi-functions you have in B? And for A, for the sports fields, do we know what we need? Do we need soccer fields, baseball fields, softball fields? Can baseball fields and softball fields be, I think I know the answer is no, but can you have a way that they're used for both?
You can.
Okay.
It's a bigger footprint, but you can, and there are, like, if you were to create a baseball field, for instance, then you could put up temporary fencing for softball, for you to accommodate such activity. So you can't necessarily do the same for softball for baseball. There is going to be an age cap. So for softball, if you have a softball field, I believe you could only go up to 12U or 10U in order for you to highlight that activity for baseball. So there is a way that you can get that, but you have limitations, and really just footprint itself.
Is there a reason that A has to have all lighted fields? Because that's putting all the lights in right behind all those houses feels kind of mean. But you meant like B didn't have the same lighting requirements. So do we have to have all the lights in A? I mean, I like the fields kind of all being connected instead of, like Julie said, the other one feels very disconnected, and you're doing maintenance on different types of things in multiple different areas. So there's a lot of moving around as opposed to like this has just this one type of maintenance. But the lighting is a concern for the houses that are right there because they're already dealing with, like you said, the parking's already coming. So if we could save them the lighting, that might be nice of us.
Yeah, we can absolutely do this without the lighting. I think that's kind of one of the bigger challenges that we've wrestled with is the lighting extends the usage of the fields, and to some extent, lighting the park later and after hours will provide a greater sense of safety. You'll have people in the park using it later at night. So there's some benefits to that, but the obvious trade-offs, challenges with dark skies, you're shoehorning the lighting between a residential area and a conservation district. So we could do this without the lighting, but we wanted to present it in that concept so that we could have that discussion.
I mean, a lot of the sports that would be using those are kind of longer days sports, right? Like spring into summer, and the sports that are winter sports are not the ones that would necessarily be using those fields nearly as much. So those shorter days and keeping the lights on into those dark hours wouldn't be nearly as much of a concern.
Football practices from 5:30 to 7:30, and yeah, it's about 7:55 right now, and it's dark, so I think they're gonna need lights. Basketball can practice till about 8:30. Greg Clark Park has lights that you can turn on. So I think sports fields do need lights.
Yeah, and the typically, like, your competitive sports fields or your baseball, your football, they're gonna need the taller lights. One option we would, for one, I think the technology for lighting has come a long way where you don't have as much ambient indirect lighting and light pollution as you once had. I think they're getting closer to dark skies friendly lighting for that. companies like Musco are some of the best at more focused lighting, but we can really adhere to our new park hours in some of those cases too, to ensure that we're not reserving out in the late evenings. But we have seen that football is a heavy user during the darker time of year, and the basketball won't require as tall of lighting, and so there's currently courts there now. But we want to be sensitive to the noise that some of those sports bring as well. So we'll be getting dialogue from Steeplechase as well, and getting their feelings and ensuring we're being sensitive, good neighbors.
Yeah, we actually had a meeting, believe that was last week. Feels like 2 weeks ago. We had a meeting with the Steeplechase community last week, and they were kind of on the same page. You had some that were one way. They're like, hey, we want the lights because it creates this avenue of safety. There have been quite a bit of safety issues occurring. So once you start securing and just having that ambient light, so to say, it creates that sense of security. But then there's also the concern of, hey, being immediately, at least some of the sport courts that you see there is a basketball court. There are conversations perhaps of adding other type of sport courts like a pickleball court or a sand volleyball court. One of the things that we did hear back from the pros master plan was to have more lit courts. So that's one of those components. But as Mr. Lopez mentioned, one of the things that we will be looking for, technology has come a long ways, but there is ways that you can have activated buttons, like push buttons, that whenever it's in use, that's when the lights come on, and it's more of like on a timer system. The photometric itself, it is something that we're going to be focusing in on. Something that's not necessarily highlighted here, but there could be potential lighting along the Vibe Trail itself. And with the Vibe Trail, rather than having everything shine at 100%, how do you incorporate some lights that highlight either the versatility aspect where they're dimmable or motion activated? So maybe you have them set at 50%, but when somebody walks right by, they pop up at 60%. So there's some avenues to that from a technology aspect that we are trying to stick to some of those CPTED principles, which is crime prevention through environmental design, but also just highlighting some of those key elements within the focal points. The parking lot itself will have lighting. That is something that will become, as Brendan mentioned, that will be coming here soon. So it is one of those components. One thing that I do want to add that we didn't necessarily mention, and I know Brendan was going to talk about it, but it's the splash ground, the playground, or the splash park itself. I think we've had this discussion in the past as far as the spray ground features not being up to par. One of these components that are highlighted here is improving that. It is identified within our 5-year CIP. We do have 2 splash pads that were just constructed about 2 years ago. Quite frankly, we have 2 seasons with them. And so it's one of those components that the infrastructure itself is truly not up to par. So one of the assessments that actually both of our consultants here today are going to be talking about is reimagining what that space will be. As of right now, I do envision, Brendan, it's going to stick in the same location where it is, but maybe just maximizing that space and bringing it up to industry standard in the sense of what we're used to. So one of the things that I like to say typically is there's one component from a playground, right? There's a playground that we just built at Steeplechase Park that is this top tier playground, and there's also playgrounds that you could just go to Home Depot and buy and install. Right now, I'm not saying what we have is from Home Depot over from the splash park itself, but it is something that industry standard. I mean, there's just a lot of flaws to the system itself. The pipes have been undersized. I mean, there's a number of challenges that we're experiencing. So that is something that we're not looking to eliminate right now, because we still feel like we can get a little bit of life out of it by some small tweaks, but I do want to be transparent in the sense that that is something that we're exploring in this plan itself of how do we improve that facility. So just wanted to mention that.
Well, how many city parks over on the east side have courts or sports fields?
So we have Waterleaf, Steeplechase, that do have ball fields. Waterleaf itself has 3 baseball, softball fields that don't really have a fencing, so you could technically play both softball and baseball out there. And then you have soccer fields. It's just really just an open green space, and so you could probably account for maybe 2, and we'll have that in the analysis with our next presentation. Just a little intro about that site analysis, and then you have steeplechase that has 2 ball fields and 1 basketball court. So that's all we have on this side of 35, and really citywide we only have 1 tennis court at Greg Clark Park that's going away. We do have, I believe, 2 basketball courts or at Greg Clark Park. I might just, so we have 2 basketball courts in the system. If I go back to the pros master plan, there's a huge list that, if you remember, has negatives. It was in red. There's a deficit based on all these amenities. So that is something that we're looking to expand. But not to mention the Sportsplex is also one of those components that the Sportsplex is adding so many multi-purpose soccer fields. So if this one's on the east side, but if I go to, as an example for Greg Clark Park, one of those, do we need to add more soccer fields to those spaces when we have the Sportsplex going to feature 6? There are opportunities as well for us to explore other undeveloped parks. How do we account for more fields? So these 2 parks themselves are the discussion points today, but we are looking to add more of that infrastructure to some of the undeveloped areas as well.
Real quick question, are there any plans to put like emergency phone stations through the trails?
No, so, well, I say yes and no. that was something that was identified early on, to having these 911 stations, so to say. But one of the things that we're looking for, there's a lot of infrastructure costs that come to something like that. I mean, you have to have a lot of dedicated, not only power, communication lines. I mean, there's a number of things, and there are some solar elements that exist out there. But the maintenance aspect of it, we're exploring something different early on. I know Mr. Chris Kelly over there talked about the signage program at the very first item. It is something that we are looking to incorporate 911 markers. So along with those signage or wayfinding signage that you saw earlier today, how do we account for if for whatever reason there needs to be dispatched? We will be working with our PD department to be able to GIS locate all of those signs. So if they were to co-reference Bunton Park 1, then PD or dispatch will know where to go. So that's a different element that's a little bit more common, so to say. And Mr. Lopez here actually has experience conducting said elements like that. So it's just one of those components that, rather than putting cost and increasing the cost overall with that trail system, how do we identify something that still works, but it's a little bit easier on cost?
Do any of the other splash pads have similar issues like the one in Steeplechase?
We're going to cover it in the next presentation,
Oh, okay.
but short answer, yes.
Okay.
Not the segue I was looking for, Chris.
But again, we love to hear y'all's feedback for this. The conversation itself is not necessarily making a decision right now, 1 or 2. It's primarily just introducing this into the community. So, hey, do we feel we're in the right path of having that conversation for the community to ultimately tell us what is it that they want to highlight, or what is it that they want to gravitate towards? So, as Mr. Lopez mentioned, I mean, I feel like our consultants have done a great job today. The presentations that you'll see, identifying those early parameters, but really just trying to fine tune what are we missing, or is there anything that we're forgetting before we start going out to the community? I understand there's a need for more fields, a need for lights, security, and so forth, but how do we create that balance? Ultimately, probably what you'll see is you're going to see a complement of both of these plans integrate into one concept. So we will get feedback that says, hey, we prefer this, kind of like we did the exercise with the signage. You know, we like this from here. How do we implement this? So organically, it's going to come into a proposed final recommendation, but it's all going to be geared from discussion today, future discussions with Park Board and Council, as well as the community.
do like the bathrooms on concept A, that they're spread out a bit versus B, where they're right next door to each other. Gives you a little more opportunity.
Appreciate that. Actually, the neighborhood said exactly the same thing. Y'all, thank you so much. We're very excited for this continuing dialogue. Appreciate the feedback tonight. Really appreciate Chris and Will and David and the team shepherding this and allowing us access to work concurrently with the team whose presentation you're about to hear. Very excited to continue our work with you and look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item 5. Receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff direction on conceptual design and engagement strategies for Greg Clark Park and Waterleaf Park. Will Atkins.
Thank you. So as stated, we are going to be coordinating a presentation tonight with Freeze and Nichols, or representatives from them, for Waterleaf and Greg Clark Park from preliminary master plans. We have both Mr. Jansen and Mr. Buchanan here tonight to help go over these presentations, and I'm very excited for these gentlemen to come up here and talk. Mr. Jansen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Jansen with Freese and Nichols. I'm the project manager for these two park master plans. And I've got my colleague, David Buchanan, here as well. We are both landscape architects. David is sort of spearheading the design effort, so we'll hear from him just a little bit later. So we're really, two main goals we wanted to do tonight was to kind of tell you what we've been working on sort of in the background in preparation for sort of our next steps in the project. What we have done to date is, you know, there's sort of three main tasks that we have. That first task is sort of what the track we're on now is kind of understanding each of these two parks, what's out there, what are things that we're very much constrained by, what are our opportunities for, you know, kind of a new bold vision for each of these parks. And so part of that exercise has been a really intensive on-the-ground survey of both of these parks, not only by ourselves, but in the case of Greg Clark, we've had a full-blown topographical survey, so all the above-ground utilities, topography, right-of-way lines, all that stuff is we now have for a base map, so that we will have a very accurate point going forward for the remainder of the planning services for these parks. And so we've also done at Greg Clark, at the James Adkins Pool Facility, we've hired a subconsultant who has done a full assessment of the entire aquatic facility, and we have provided staff with that report. And so that information is going to help us sort of decide, you know, how much of the aquatic facility still has a reasonable lifespan, you know, how much can we expand. So that assessment was something that we felt was very important at this stage of the game. So again, to reiterate what Chris said, we're going to be providing you with some thoughts on sort of what are at each of these parks that we have to sort of either plan around or be prepared to change. And then additionally, we have provided, we weren't overachievers like Dunaway. We only have one concept to show you for each of our parks tonight. So we do want to show you this concept for each of the parks purely as a jumping off point to sort of elicit some feedback. You know, we know as much as we know about these parks just from a very short time, but you guys are the users of these parks. You know, your families probably use these parks, your community members use these parks. So we're showing you these as sort of a start of a dialogue. And then we're gonna go through some of those aspects that we've sort of discovered and things that we've sort of noticed that may be a benefit to the overall park planning effort moving forward. So right here in the red is kind of where we're at right now. And so what we hope to gain tonight is some additional information and additional direction that you may be able to provide us so that when we start doing our community engagement exercises, we've got sort of a leg up when we talk to the community, and whatever refinements that we need to do based on the general concepts and the spatial arrangements that we're going to show you tonight. We're hoping that we can kind of sort of bridge that gap between this body and the greater community. So that's sort of the discussion. And then, you know, we, like most everyone else here in this room, we've reviewed the recently adopted PROS Master Plan. And one of the things that kind of stuck out to us were these sort of three concepts, whether it's the nature experience of a park, you know, it needs to be a vibrant destination that people actually want to, you know, spend their time and their recreational dollars going to, and that needs to be balanced, it needs to be connected. So this is sort of the framework of what, you know, we're kind of basing some of our layout decisions on and our design decisions on at this point. So with that, I'll turn it over to David, and he's going to kind of walk you through some of the thought that went through these concepts.
Apologies, I have to lower the microphone. No, you're good. So real quick, thank you again for the opportunity to present to y'all, both Waterleak and Greg Clark. Before we get started, if y'all need to do any exercises to stretch your legs, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Though the chairs look comfortable, if your legs are as tight as mine right now, you probably deserve to stand up. So like Brian mentioned, we're going to approach these two park concepts by showing sort of one concept per park. You'll see for each what we did is we tried to diagram this out so that our process and decision making hopefully makes some sense. So it helps guide you in understanding our decision making and how we derived these initial concepts. So starting at Waterleaf, those who are familiar with Waterleaf, it's about a 90-acre park site. One of the first things we like to look at when we dive into park designs is understanding the site's context, because to me the context is just as critical as what you find on site. And so for Waterleaf, there are really sort of three key existing elements that we want to make sure we tie to, which is the Bunton Creek Park there to the north. Obviously, we're connecting pretty handily to the Waterleaf neighborhood community, and then sort of on that sort of southwest side, tying into the Waterleaf basketball court and swimming pool. And then obviously as a hindrance there, sort of to the southeast, is the Kyle wastewater plant. Again, we want to be cognizant of that and do our best to work within the constraints that provides us. As a second sort of assessment of this site, those who have been out there know that Plum Creek plays a heavy role in sort of providing a nice amenity that we can hopefully leverage in our conceptual design. But you'll see it also sort of divides the site quite nicely into sort of two zones, and we'll cover that here in a minute. Shown in blue there is the 100-year floodplain. So you can see there's, in terms of usable space that's not going to be inundated with water, there's not a ton of it. So we want to take advantage of those spaces where we do, and then utilize the spaces that may be inundated, following some ecological principles and creative solutions there. The second key point, as I go back to connectivity, we want to understand where people are coming from. I always say that the best design sites are the ones that people use. And so understanding how users will access that site is critical. So you can see in orange there, we sort of define sort of those pedestrian locations, those pedestrian entry points. And then there's one entry right now from a vehicular perspective that's more formal, which is down there in the south there off of Abundance. A critical piece to this you'll see too there is that drainage swell. If you've been out there, it sort of divides that roughly 20-acre corner into sort of two distinct spots. When it rains, it's hard to get across without getting muddy. So we want to, again, begin to think about how that can be integrated into our conceptual work. So the way we've started to frame the site is we start to look at these sort of zones of use. And each one sort of serves an independent role in the discussion of how we develop the ideas. With Plum Creek, you begin to establish a pretty forested area that's pretty dense. And something that we want to make sure that we keep as intact as possible. Within sort of those spaces, we've sort of defined these sort of open nature spaces. So these zones where we don't want to put too much active recreation. We understand the importance of maintaining as much ecological sensitivity as we can. And then looking at sort of that southeast corner, which we sort of coined this open active. Right now, there are some sort of baseball, softball facilities there on the left side of that open active. And on the east side of that is a sort of open field or open play. It looks like mostly used for soccer practices, things like that. And sort of this sort of intermittent space, which we sort of call this open transition. And what that starts to define are these areas that we can carry people through to get them across the site. Again, site access is important, and each one of these zones are so distinctively far apart. We need to find a way to unify and connect both sides of this park. And so walking through some of the conceptual sort of process of ours, first and foremost is looking at how we interconnect the site between all of these important points. You'll start to see a hierarchy in our symbologies when it comes to trails. What we're showing here is sort of that Vibe Trail extension, which is going to be a little bit wider, more active use around that 12-foot mark. What that starts to now define are sort of these use zones to sort of walk you through, and we'll start north and work our way south. What we're wanting to do is integrate another hierarchical trail system, which is these smaller internal park trails, which are more 8 foot in width, something that's a little bit more, I guess, specific to individual users within the park. What we're wanting to do is tie these two sites together. You'll see that we actually span across Plum Creek. The idea is to reconnect both sides. What we're going to be focusing on, and you'll see this as the concept sort of moves forward, is we're looking at that north portion of the site being more ecologically based, while the south side becomes more active recreation based. Some of the key points here, if you've been out there, there are some existing structures on site today, which are the maintenance facility, maintenance shed, and then right adjacent to that is the restroom facility. And then adjacent to that is an existing playground, and then currently in design right now is an expansion for that playground. So what we began to look at is having those structures start to define the orientation of our proposed amenities. So you can see in those sort of oval spaces on that southeast corner, again, we've been able to still maintain those 3 baseball fields. We've slightly reoriented those so that there's a direct line of access to the restroom facility. Right now it's a bit circuitous to get there. And then on the east side of the sort of the 2 ovals there is we've conceptually shown how much you could fit within the space, but the idea is to try to maintain that sort of as open recreation for use as needed with frisbee throwing and or some formal like soccer. And then what we began to do with those 2 ovals is interlink that southeast corner, creating almost a loop trail. So if you wanted to go out there and walk your mileage, you can easily do that without having to walk too far. And then as we sort of build upon the hardscape elements, what we began to integrate now are more of these softer touches to the site. You'll see in that nature area, we began to integrate soft surface trails, unpaved surfaces allow ingress and egress throughout the tree area. And then we thought it'd be nice knowing that sort of the part of the northern corner there is covered in floodplain, that we begin to integrate a boardwalk, something again, ecologically based, relatively easy to maintain considering its height and elevation, and get you to those point of locations that you normally couldn't go to with a rain event. Tied to that, I think one of the key components of this is, if you remember that straight line channel that carried through there, what we want to do is sort of meander that slightly, turn it into an amenity, not an eyesore or a hindrance. And so that blue dashed line begins to sort of meander throughout that southeast corner, again, to help tie those 2 sites together. So similar to the previous presentation, what we want to do is give you a sense of what some of these key elements would look like and feel like. Again, starting on the sort of the top of the screen, working our way down, the idea of traversing Plum Creek is very, very important. So trying to utilize those pedestrian bridges in a way that allows ingress and egress and connectivity across site will be important. And then looking at integrating, like I mentioned, those boardwalk elements, something that's ecologically focused, that allows access into zones that you may not have access to upon rain events. The conversation has been had about the potential for mountain biking out there. I know they're currently using it today, but can we maintain that and hopefully maybe expand upon that as needed? And then extending upon the ecological side, integrating some of the cool signage, hopefully, that these guys are making, but designating those wildlife zones so that we ensure maintenance crews will go out there and mow over that, and then integrating some of the more ecologically focused signage, and then looking at an extension of the existing bird blind out there today. And then extending that into looking at some of the trail surfaces, looking at that surface trail as the points of connection through the trees. And then again, making sure we create a nice experience for the Vibe Trail as you traverse across the site. And then lastly, looking at that sort of creek meander, again, trying to renaturalize that to make it a focal point and not a hindrance. And then again, maintaining some of that flex space on that southeast corner. It's a beautiful space to be in. People use it today. We want to make sure we maintain that. And then taking into account access to the playground. Obviously, that's currently in the works. And so we're working with the playground manufacturer to truly understand what we're doing there. And then lastly, sort of maintaining, those ball fields. They're used. It's silly to take them away unless there's another site that may make sense to move those to. So again, keeping in mind the existing program, trying to sort of reinvent what's out there today through integration of unique and special things to really start to create an identity for a Waterleaf Park. Now we're going to go over to Greg Clark, again, following sort of the same cues and same processes. Greg Clark's a little bit different of a park. I'm sure many of y'all have been out there since it's sort of a stone throw down the way. But it is an interesting park to be in, if I put it one way. But similar to Waterleaf, we always look at the site context and try to understand where people are coming from. Its adjacency to two schools is very, very critical. It sort of could serve as that hub to connect people to place. The connection to downtown, both sort of visually and functionally, along Center Street will be important to think about. And then looking at the cow maintenance shop, it's there today. Will it be there tomorrow? That's a conversation we're having, but take into account that if it is, how do we maintain access to that? Similar to Waterleaf, there's a lot of stuff going on from a hydraulic perspective. There's sort of surrounding the entire site as an existing drainage swell. I like to call this park sort of the land of 100 bridges. There's a lot of bridges that traverse it. And what we're trying to do now is you'll see in the conceptual side, is try to reconnect both sides of it. But also carrying through there is an existing large wastewater line that connects the community to the north to the community to the south. And so again, how do we work with some of these existing constraints to better define and create an identity for Greg Clark? And so again, for us, what we try to do is process spatially what we see. And so the way we've sort of framed it is that sort of west side where we see active recreation, that's sort of what it serves today. It houses the four, I call them T-ball, softball fields. They're quite unique in their design, being that there's not fencing and there's a shared outfield. And then the soccer field there to the north, which sort of is oriented and not quite sized correctly for a full-size field. And then I won't dive into the other side, but I'll hit on some of the key points that's going on there. Obviously, maintaining that Ash Pavilion is super critical for us, knowing the history and the context behind that. Looking at ways to integrate additional recreation that may be either taken away based on the improved skate park out there, and then the extension of the aquatic facility on the south side. So again, similar for us, we try to figure out how do people get to the site, and for the most part, people drive here. We've been out there a few times. It seems like anybody who's arrived has driven. There's not a lot of connectivity to the corners in terms of pedestrian side. And so we want to think about that as we move forward. But most importantly for us, we want to try to simplify these points of connections. If you've been inside, it can be a little confusing on how to get to where you want to go. And so for us, one of our first steps was to try to re-identify where these entry points are and simplify the vehicular connectivity throughout the site. And so the way we've done that is we've sort of pigeoned those into really 4 key entry points: one along Gregg Drive, one along the west side along Ranger, one entry point along Center Street, and then one potential entry there off of Veterans tied to the aquatics facility. And what we began to do is look at the idea of the sense of arrival. Again, the one key thing missing from Greg Clark is identity. And so hopefully this arrival point, this sort of roundabout, will allow people to enter the site and begin to orient themselves based on hopefully some cool signage, again, that helps bring people to where they want to go. And then a simplified vehicular circulation within the park to make it easy to get to where you're wanting to go to. Carrying some of the programmatic ideas. So we've simplified the ball fields on the west side by enlarging those slightly and creating 2 baseball fields. We've sort of shifted the soccer field over and made it actually a full-size field to accommodate actual play. And then we're looking at reorienting the youth field on the northeast corner and do 2 small sort of T-ball fields at that location. As part of that, obviously we have the Ash Creek Pavilion, which we definitely want to keep. And then as part of the current design, we're looking at ways to implement the new skate park that's being designed as we speak. And then associated with sort of that skate park, we want to bring in what I sort of defined as the action sports. So that's volleyball, basketball, tennis, the things that make a lot of noise, sort of trying to hone those into one general vicinity. And then Brian hinted at the aquatic side, but taking the feedback we've received from our study and look at, is there potential to expand that, and does that make sense? So as part of this concept, we have looked at expanding that and making that a little bit larger to provide additional amenities that aren't there today. And then sort of tied to that, similar to what we did for Waterleaf, we wanted to reinvent that central drainage channel and make it an amenity, not a hindrance. So again, what we began to do is meander that throughout the site. And what that allows us to do is sort of blur that line between east and west and reconnect both sides. They're highlighted in gray. We began to sort of conceptually locate where the potential parking could be for each one of these amenities. And again, you'll see each one is tied to an associated program. And sort of as that crescendo to the overall concept, we know that Greg Clark is currently used programmatically for a lot of cool events, citywide events. We want to make sure we maintain that central lawn and maintain a central core throughout that site, and then flank both of those on each side with associated parking. And you'll see here in a minute, I'll highlight some additional playground there in red, and then sort of maybe a reinvention of the existing spray ground there also in red. So again, just quickly highlighting some of the sort of aesthetic components. Again, when I defined active recreation, what we're wanting to do now is introduce back in basketball, maybe pickleball if it works, tennis, volleyball, things like that. And again, honing those into one location. Again, looking at the expansion of the baseball field, making those a bit more functional. Looking at a multi-purpose field, again, sizing up the soccer field to be fitting to the context of a soccer field. Looking at the proposed design for the skate park and how to integrate that into the overall context of the site. And then, again, providing that sort of central open lawn for the larger events that may happen on site. As part of that, again, we talked about identity for the park, but maybe we can begin to integrate some, like a themed playground, something that may be contextual to Greg Clark and or the city to help, again, bring that identity. And then, again, reinventing that splash pad in a location that's, again, more fitting and central to the site to create that sort of hub of energy. And then sort of lastly, highlighting the importance of naturalizing this creek. Again, you can still maintain hydraulic function, but make it in a sort of beautiful aesthetic way. And then using those trails to interconnect each one of these programmatic elements. And then lastly, again, the sky's the limit on the expanded aquatic, something we're currently assessing. And hopefully we can begin to look at what that looks like as the project moves forward. don't know how I did on time, but hopefully nobody's asleep. But with that, again, we'll sort of open it up for questions. Again, just reemphasize, this is just a first take. And so any guidance, any feedback would be super helpful for us.
Greg Clark is completely different timeline and cost.
That's a good
Ballpark.
question. I don't know
Like,
what the cost
it feels
would
like
be.
everything changes. All of the roads, like, I mean, that you're knocking down like almost everything and putting back something completely different. That feels like years of not being able to use that park. And it'd be great, but like that's years of not being able to use that park potentially. So, and I mean, do we have money identified for that much work? That feels like a wildly huge project.
It will definitely be a wildly huge project, but it will be phased. So, for example, the skate park is essentially phase one, and it's within a defined area, and it is budgeted for. So every time we do a new phase, it will have to be absolutely budgeted for and accounted for from both a design, construction, and a long-term maintenance perspective. So all of that will be taken into account. Does it answer your question?
So what happens if you don't get funding for one piece and like we've already started ripping other parts out? Like, let's say we rip out the splash pad and we move the basketball courts and then we don't get funding for putting them back.
We will not start designing or constructing anything that we do not have funding for. So I promise you that.
I'll also add, so another component to this, again, reimagining the two concept approach. So one of the tasks that we had, and quite frankly, compared to Dunaway in a way sort of had like a clean slate in a way that they could kind of reimagine this, where there's a lot of constraints for Greg Clark Park in particular. There's a lot happening out there. Not only do we have the road bond occurring just on Center Street, there's also conversations for detention, retention of some type from a regional aspect. And so there's still a lot more to digest for Greg Clark Park. You're absolutely right. This plan that you see here is sort of reimagining that park. One of the components that did not get accounted for is, or kind of alluded to, is the maintenance building itself. Is there opportunities for us to enhance into that space to better connect? This plan here is for sure going to have to be something that's phased, but another exercise that we'll be conducting is, here's this plan to reimagine, and then there's other concepts similar to the last presentation where maybe we're just upgrading existing footprints that are on site. So there's going to be these avenues for us to be able to play with, but cost-wise, I mean, it could easily be something like the Sportsplex where you have this sticker shock of a number, but we know it's going to have to be phased just from that aspect. So strategically, those conversations will be coming down the line where we're going to have to figure out what part makes sense to trigger. To answer your question, there is funding identified in the 5-year CIP that does trigger some type of phased design, and potentially, depending how the numbers stack, we are going to be leveraging several buckets funding with grants and so forth, but there could potentially also be a phase one within this 5-year CIP for us to trigger movement. The aquatic component itself is something entirely different, where, I mean, that's a cost in itself. But as far as the park itself, we are looking to improve the ball fields, playground, all those items that we know need to get some TLC.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with the roundabout.
It seems like it takes up a lot of room.
Yeah. And the parking for the basketball courts, you're gonna have to go around the roundabout on one side, and the parking's gonna be up towards the skate park on the other. And if you don't find parking there, you gotta park over here at the aquatics.
Yeah, I mean, this is purely for discussion purposes, just more of what we consider a bubble diagram, bubble sketch, for us to be able to just to spark conversation. Those are good points, though. Those will definitely be things that Friesen Nichols will definitely be exploring even further.
You speak of changing these fields to T-ball fields. Will we still be able to play kickball on them? Will those be regulation size or?
Yeah, so you could probably not T-ball, you probably couldn't play adult kickball on those, but those ball fields that you see there, what size are those, David or Brian? Do you know the softball on the east side, or on the west side, I'm sorry? Or are they regulation baseball, softball?
The ones on the west side are, the ones on the north side are at similar scale to what's actually there today in that northeast corner. That's just, again, just re-envisioned and added to.
Yeah, so they're baseball size, so we'll be able to still accommodate those current programs on site. I mean, one of the other elements that we're looking at is from the adaptive side of the house, is there an opportunity for like a miracle field where you can incorporate like a T-ball into that? So that's just early discussions that we're having.
That's all the discussion?
No, I would like to, can we go to the water leaf? Well, I can start talking while you're scanning back, but I will say for that, and being from that neighborhood that's off of Button Creek, we are kind of secluded just based off the nature of it being on Button Lane. They did just put grist mill, so we're a little more accessible. But I do, like, to me, this feels like it incorporates that neighborhood better because the trail's there. We had the nature trail, but the bridge walkway that went down from the Button Creek flooded. And then if you did go on that trail, it was mostly muddy most of the time. So I think incorporating this so it's more usable will make that neighborhood more accessible and we'd feel more like the community because right now we're kind of just in a weird little pocket of the city. And then the nature trail, you would expand it?
That's the intent. So again, the goal is to preserve what's there today first and foremost. And as part of that, work with the city and the community to add to it if funding is there.
And do we know what's so there's the land, that land is still owned privately, right? So that's Satsuma, and there's that black dotted line, that's still privately owned behind the houses there?
Yeah, there is some ownership that we are currently in discussion, not only from the Vibe Trail alignment with the Plum Creek East, but there is some HOA property, but we are in conversation with the HOA just from the sense of public access easement. But there is some land there that is owned by the city, and then there's others that belong to the Button Creek HOA. But again, we are in the process of communicating with them.
Okay, and why I ask is because they're building that new development, Regstar, or however you pronounce that. Did they buy that whole tract of land that goes up into the trees?
Are you talking about East Button Creek Reserve?
Yes,
So the big field where it's labeled playground and flex open space.
the other direction. So
Oh, going towards Lehman High School?
here's Satsuma,
Mhm.
and then you see where the playground is in that field?
The Button Creek Playground. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe, okay, I'm not articulating it well. So Button Creek is the squared neighborhood, and then Regstar has that new development that houses have not been built on yet.
Oh, 700 Button Lane?
700 Mountain
Okay.
Lane, and there's a big patch of land there that I think is still owned by a farmer. And what I'm getting at is what happens, I think it's still privately owned. Because that's kind of a weird spot to have a parcel there where you have development, park, and then what happens with that patch of land if it gets sold? If it's not sold already.
So the area between, is it Ramage or Ramage Elementary and Button Creek Reserve?
Yes.
It is all owned by the development group that is going to build out 700 Button Lane. But I think they're probably still growing crops on the area they haven't developed yet.
Okay, so will be taken in consideration. Because I would hate that we build out to the tree line and then that patch of land is sold. And then it disrupts your plan here.
So the 700 Button Lane project, it will have, there's the spur of the Vibe Trail just north of the ball fields
Mhm.
going north into there. It'll continue the Vibe Trail, and they're going to construct that portion for us.
Oh, okay.
And it'll go back up to Button Lane, and then probably cross over for a future development on the north side of Bunn Lane. But there's going to be a little bit of parkland along that black dash line that's going to be dedicated to the city as part of the 700 Bunn Lane project. So it'll actually be a de facto expansion of Waterley Park when they get to that phase, which
Okay.
is, I don't have a timeline for that.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other feedback or thoughts as far as the way that this project is currently in progress or projecting?
Is there a plan just in case it floods again?
Sorry?
Is there a plan in case it floods again?
So as far as maintenance aspect or how so? I mean, one of those, we are going to be deciding within floodplain parameters, but if flood event does happen, from a maintenance aspect, that there are avenues, at least from the trail aspect, that we're trying to elevate that trail to be able to avoid having to close down to Board Member Orgich's point where you're having those. But as far as the ball fields and stuff, as of right now, those are outside of the floodplain, so we don't necessarily envision that happening. But anything within the floodplain aspect, you almost decided with the intent that it'll get flooded, but you are looking to instill some type of finishes to be able to make it easier on maintenance.
One of the key aspects of that too is the vibe portion. We tried to keep as much of that out of the floodplain, knowing that it's not only used for, you know, recreation, but it could be used for transportation too. So we want to make sure that that is as open as much as possible to allow connectivity. You know, the challenge is going to be as we cross the creek and to what elevation can we place that with marrying that with costs. But again, something that we'll be diving into at some point to better understand that.
I have a question for the city. So, since this particular trail is kind of secluded, there is quite a bit of pollution. Like the creeks, I don't know if y'all have been back there, there's tires, there's bottles, cans, whatever. It's gonna still be secluded and you're gonna have more foot traffic. I'm assuming that's gonna require more maintenance how are we gonna police that basically, of people not going in there and just throwing garbage because you can't see that they're doing it because it's in a forested area?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are going to have to rely heavily on our partners from cleaning events. So it's one thing that we are looking to launch on a monthly basis, actually. It's something that our conservation team, in collaboration with Tamara here, that we are looking to elevate that volunteer program to be able to have those type of cleaning events. As far as the policing and such, that's something that we'll have to work with PD, of course. But as we start improving these said amenities, I mean, we're going to instill lighting. We're going to have a lot of parameters that maybe will help deter that. It's not to say that it'll fully eliminate it, but there are ways for us to be able to elevate our volunteer game, for us to be able to clean some of those streams where it used to be, it'll be once a year, that we're trying to do that more repetitively or repeated.
I always like to say too, the best eyes in a park are the users and the people that use it every day. And so in a park like this, right now it's pretty limited and segregated. There's not a whole lot in between. I think once we start to combine and coordinate with those communities to merge them together, there'll be a lot more eyes on site, which I hopefully, knock on fake wood, additional policing and safety measures will be there.
I'd like to go back to Greg Clark real quick. On the aquatic component, there was conversations early on about some inspiration behind another city. So those are avenues that we are exploring, perhaps. Just wanted to make that note.
Shall we move on to item 6?
Yeah, and I believe you guys are okay with it, maybe taking a 5-10 minute break.
Thank you all.
Do you want to?
Let's start now. I second it.
8:55, 10-minute break.
We ready to go? Item 6, receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff feedback regarding the fiscal year 24-25 recreation programs and special events, and discuss upcoming recreation programs and special events. Amy Garcia.
All right, everyone. Hi, good evening. I will be efficient and go through slides, so if you need extra explanation, please feel free to stop me. But I will give an update regarding the fiscal year 24-25 and just go over general highlights and just information as we move through. So how we're implementing our PROS Master Plan, the vision and mission that's come out of our PROS Master Plan, as well as program and event highlights, what's new to the department, to the division, I'm sorry, and then Kyle Fair planning, upcoming, and looking ahead. So to start off with, as you all know, PROS Master Plan was adopted in May of 2025. Why this matters, this will ensure strategic and substantial growth as we plan for the Parks and Recreation Services and provides a community-driven framework. So this PROS Master Plan is to help us guide for the next 5 years and some of the staff progress that we've been doing. We've been meeting with the management and executive leadership as we strategize our year 1 goals of implementation from the PROS Master Plan, and we are prepared to launch that in October of 2025. So we'll be coming to you all in October with how we are implementing some of those strategies.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we've had presentations from a couple different consultants.
Mm-hmm.
How do we keep things, we were developing our identity, right? How do we keep our identity uniform and consistent when we have multiple consultants with multiple ideas, right? So the park, the steeplechase, and like Kyle is a vision, and then Waterleaf and Greg Clark Park is a vision, like, and they seem like two different visions. So how do we meld that together?
I think the answer's been this, the master plan that we're highlighting on this slide, actually. We're informed by this plan of what the community needs are. We know our deficit in the system, and that's what we're working to solve for. And that manifests itself in different ways because there are different needs across the system. And so some areas we need more, we're limited with sports everywhere, but we have to triage it and start somewhere. And then we have to ensure balance as we grow. There's some amenities that we don't even have right now, like pickleball in our system. But I think those things that tie it together are going to be like the signage plans and the park standards. So you're in a Kyle Park, but you also get a different feel, and you get different needs met. You should have a different experience in every park. At Lake Kensington Park, for instance, you shouldn't have the same experience as Greg Clark Park, where it's very rich in amenities that's needed for Central Town and having a hub. But you should feel like you're someplace different. You're in Kyle because you recognize the sign packages and some of the standards. And I hope I answered your question.
So you did, and so we have the consulting with the PROS plan, and then we'll have the actual construction. And I'm sure you can have two construction companies, give them the same plan, you have two different outcomes. How do we make sure that we're monitoring that they're sticking with our vision versus now we have two different things happening?
Well, we got soundboarding with the community for the design piece of it. Once we go to construction documents, there's no deviation from it. There might be some acceptable substitutes if something, if you got a material with longer lead times, but those are really limited and restricted. I mean, construction documents are going to get down to the screws of a plan, and those companies all build within those confines.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and so from our PROS Master Plan, we were able to create the vision and mission, and I would like to read these verbatim just so I don't mess up on the information. So we envision a thriving, inclusive network of parks and recreation where nature and community comes together to enhance quality of life and establish Kyle as a premier regional standard. And from the mission, to be a premier and sustainable parks and recreation system that builds community and promotes health, conservation, and inclusivity. So this is our guiding, again, from the PROS Master Plan. This is going to help guide us for the next 5 years. We have now instilled this within our, we're living by this at this time, and we're trying to implement within everything we do moving forward. So this is our guide as we move forward. All right, so just a quick highlight. So the camp. So we conducted our Kyle summer camp and our Kyle spring break camp. In total, we were able to operate 9 weeks of camp with 120 campers weekly for the summer. Duplicated services for those individuals that did come back each week. We had about 4,214. Non-duplicated services was 248. And activities changed from STEM programs, arts and crafts, active activities, as well as field trips. Some of those benefits was affordable health care to the local families, and then we also provide to the surrounding areas as well, encouraging social development and lasting friendships. Right now, staff are currently planning for the 2026 spring and summer camp. And here you'll see some of the images from summer camp. If y'all have any questions, I'd like to take anything regarding summer camp at this time. All right, so a quick highlight regarding aquatics. So the aquatics division saw over 10,000 participants across all programs. Open swim and lap swim, we saw about 9,600 participants, where we did outsource our swim lessons to British Swim School. They were able to see 653 participants. We did house in-house our Kyle Kuta swim team. This is a recreational swim team. And then from there, we did our dive-in movie, which we saw about 70 participants. So we did 2 dive-in movies for the season. And then our Polar Bear Splash, which happens on January 1st, which is upcoming, we were able to see 92 participants. The splash pads did close on September 23rd, so all aquatic features at this time are closed for the season. Looking ahead, staff are currently planning for the 2026 aquatic season, and we are scheduled to open May 26th or 23rd of 2026. Therapeutic recreation. So this was one of our newest divisions within the Parks and Recreation Department, was established about 2 years ago, and is led by our certified therapeutic recreation specialist, which is also our recreation coordinator. Some of the programs that we were able to offer were Social Squad, Special Olympics. We had three different sports. So that was swim, bocce, and I'm missing one. I'm sorry. And now bowling. I'm sorry. All Abilities Dances, we host 4 within the year. We have our next one coming up for October, and that is going to be October 17th. Some of those impacts, we were able to just engage the community, providing a safe space for individuals to come out, providing also opportunities for volunteering, partnering with Texas State as well. We were able to conduct a adaptive field day in August, and that is through the partnership with Texas State University, and we're continuing that programming and partnership with them at this time. We're looking at the MOU and the agreement and how that can be highlighted back into our programs. Here you see some images. The second image on the top is from the adaptive field day. Some of the images from the athletes from bocce, swimming, as well as Social Squad and the dances. We do have a sensory tent that we try to bring out to our community events, and it just provides an opportunity for individuals to come if they are getting overstimulated, giving them a safe place we offer headphones or fidget spinners, whatever different resources that we can provide. And T-ball, this was our first season, which wrapped up in August. We were able to provide services to 118 youth athletes. This was the first season. We're looking to try to host 2 seasons for next year and bring back those current athletes as well as expanding out. This was hosted at Greg Clark Park, and this was a high, this registration closed out very quickly, and so we saw the need and the want. So we're currently working on the second season at this time. And some of these are the images that our communications department was able to go out and take. Any questions so far? All right, here's Memorial Park programming highlights. So this year was the first year that the Parks and Recreation Department took the major lead on the programming that we did at Heroes Memorial Park, and that was with the Flag Day that we hosted, as well as a Memorial Day, 9/11, and upcoming we will have First Responders Day on October 28th. This is a great partnership that we have with the local AMVETS group, VFW, as well as the Ladies Auxiliary. So we do get those feedback from those different stakeholders, and they provide information and also resources as we continue on. The 9/11 program we just hosted, we did in partnership with the Kyle Fire Department as well as the Kyle Police Department, where they were able to offer some of the stories on how they were impacted by 9/11. And we are looking to continue those programming opportunities as well as enhancing and increasing attendance and getting the word out. Here are some images from some of those programs. At the very bottom right, which was our Flag Day, and then you see the attendance that has been able to get out there. This is, again, through that partnership and then through the communications department, really highlighting the programming going at Heroes Memorial Park. All right, so for special events, as you all know, we have holiday events, Heroes Memorial Park programming, community and culture events that drive us for the Recreation Division. Within that, we've been able to host over 30 special events for the community, and majority of those events are free to the community, like the Easter event, which I'll talk about next, our Center Street Trick or Treat that's coming up on the 25th. All of these programs free, and many of the amenities within are also free as well. So the Easter Extravaganza annual, we saw over 2,000 attendees. We were able to give out over 60,000 eggs. We did, I want to say, don't quote me on this, I want to say we did about 6 egg drops within. Myself and Deputy Director Escoto were out in the middle, so it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of kids. It's an exciting time. We were able to provide those eggs to those individuals coming out, and we're also looking to enhance those programs as we continue them year after year. All right, and our Kyle Market Days, so this is hosted monthly starting in April, and it goes all the way till November. We do themed market days, so this past month was Hispanic Heritage Month, and then coming into October, we will have the next one on October 11th, and that is in partnership with our Founders Day Parade, and then we will have the next one in November, also hosted with our Veterans Day Parade. As we continue on, we are looking to revamp. We're trying to enhance participation at these programs, not only from attendees, but as well as our vendors. And so that can come in the form of increased different types of performances that we're offering to bring out a draw based on the musical performances. But staff are currently meeting to revamp this for 2026. All right, Jams on the Green, we had 5 hosted for this year. This is a free event, just live musical performances at La Verde Park. This past month, we had Bitty Bitty Banda, which brought in over 200 people, we have vendors come out, and you see how they're able to engage at the volleyball court. I know here, this picture in the middle, we do have people from surrounding areas. So this group here, they are from Manchac. They come from the Marbridge Foundation. They come to every Jams on the Green since we've started these. And it gives, again, a free opportunity just to come out and enjoy live music. So we're looking to expand these as we continue on and add a few more programming aspects into La Verde Park. All right, just to highlight once more, for Heroes Memorial Park programming, that was our first year, so looking to continue on and expand. Therapeutic programming, like I mentioned before, Special Olympics bowling is new this year. We just started this, and registration's still open, but first practice begins October 2nd, and then we will be adding additional social squad dates and the adaptive field day. As we bring the Kyle Community Center online, we're also looking to expand our programming for therapeutic recreation in partnership with the Kyle Area Senior Zone. And through youth programming, we offer the T-ball. And again, we're looking for a second season to be added into 2026. We were able to add in volleyball clinics, tennis lessons, and we have now added in the 4U division for the youth basketball. From this, we were able to do conservation programs. This is through our conservation division, so hands-on education and stewardship initiatives. This is led by the supervisors within the conservation. So all registration for this is found on Rec Desk, and I believe there is one coming up for October. Special events, we have 2 additional movies in the park dates, and then 1 additional Jams on the Green. And then if you all, so I know we saw Julie out there for the 5K run, so thank you for coming on out. And that was hosted by Tamara Aquino. And for senior programming for 2026, we're looking to enhance our programming for seniors through the Kyle Community Center, which will primarily serve our seniors in partnership with the Kyle Area Senior Zone. And community outreach, we have our monthly newsletter. Individuals are able to get that monthly newsletter from our rec desk, so if you're signed up as a member, and then our Kyle Guide, which will be coming out in October for the winter. And this will be our 2nd edition. All right, Kyle Fair. I'll be able to touch a little bit on Tori, our new division manager, but the date for Kyle Fair for 2026 is May 15th through the 17th. Staff are currently actively preparing for the upcoming event, gathering feedback, taking the feedback that we did receive from the 2025 event from different departments and anybody that was involved in Kyle Fair. And this will be led in appointment from our Recreation Division Manager for Special Events, Victoria Hill, and we will be leading the charge for 2026 and execution. All right, and some of our upcoming events for October.
Question?
Yeah.
For the Kyle Fair, once we make a decision on this park signage, are we gonna incorporate that into the Kyle Fair logo? Or are they 2 separate things?
They would be 2 separate things. Yeah, they're 2 separate initiatives as far as what the signage for any of the parks. So this here is the branding that we currently are with for Kyle Fair.
It's more like an event branding versus park branding.
Okay, got it.
All right, so October, like I mentioned before, First Responders Day, our Founders Day Parade, City Fest. So October 18th will be City Fest. It'll be at La Verde Park starting at 4 p.m. And it's an opportunity for individuals to come out and hear the mayor address to the city on what highlights of 2025 as well as what to look forward to in 2026. And then we will have our fireworks show also displayed at the City Fest event. And this was as a reschedule from the July 4th event. So this will be a one-time opportunity for those fireworks for City Fest. And then we will have Center Street Trick or Treat on October 28th. And this event starts at 9 a.m. and it will be at Mary Kyle Hartson Park. And then in November, we have Veterans Day Parade. And December, we'll kick off our holiday programming with Santa's Arrival on December 1st, Grinch Fest on December 13th, Holiday Lights. So we will have Holiday Lights at Mary Kyle Hartson Park, Lake Kyle, and La Verde Park. And then 25 days programming, as well as Santa Rides in Kyle, and that will be on 3 days. I want to say it's December 9th, 10th, and 11th.
The fireworks for City Fest, are they at 8? And where are they being put off from? Like it says La Verde Park, which is where you go to watch them, but where do they actually like go off from?
So it will be after the mayor's address to the city will be whenever the fireworks go on. So I can't give you a specific time at this time, but I would say around 8 o'clock-ish, just depending on how long that address goes. And it will be in a location where the new Sportsplex will be. That's where they will launch from. So if you're at La Verde Park, you just turn around and look north.
The Hayes High School Band is having an event that evening, and they have an 8 o'clock performance. All we're gonna be able to hear is fireworks.
There will be fireworks, yes. No, not necessarily. It will still be the 25-minute show, but the firework display will be different. Mm-hmm. All right, so just looking ahead, expanding our arts and culture programming, and this goes back into La Verde Park. Inclusive recreation, also enhancing the opportunities that we have there. The Kyle Community Center, bringing more programming for seniors in partnership with the Kyle Area Senior Zone, and then our commitment to the community engagement. Again, getting feedback from you all is really important as you guys are out in the community talking to different citizens, and just the whole goal is to strengthen the community and improve the quality of life for City of Kyle. And that is all, unless there's any questions. All right. Me again.
We'll move on to item 7. Receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff feedback regarding general departmental updates on new staff, introductions, community events, programs, aquatics, capital improvement projects, future meetings, and board member recognitions.
All right, so
Amy.
Amy Garcia, Assistant Director for the Parks and Recreation Department. Brief overview, and then I will pass it on over to my colleague, Deputy Escoto. So I will go over new staff, community events, programs, aquatics, and then Mr. Escoto will take over for CIP, upcoming meetings, and recognitions. So she has waited all night, and this is her opportunity. Victoria, also, she goes by Tori. I will let her give her brief intro, and then I'll come right back.
Thank you all for having me tonight. My name is Tori Hill. I am a certified Parks and Recreation professional, and I am also a certified festival and associate. I have been in the Parks and Recreation space with community events and special events for over 7 years, and I am incredibly excited to get started in the city of Kyle. Thank you.
So she will oversee our community events division and oversee full-time staff, Sheba Alagoisa, as well as Darcy Scott, which helps with the programming, and then Rachel Acevedo, which is our visual design program coordinator. All right, and then we have one approved full-time special event coordinator that will be coming online in March, so that will also fall under Tori. All right. So I gave a quick overview of some of these, so I'm just going to hit them. If you have questions, I slow me down. But Jams on the Green occurred this month, as well as Movies in the Park. We showed Wonka, the Kyle Market Days, which was the second Saturday of the month. And then going into September as well was a 9/11 event on September 11th at Heroes Memorial Park. And then the Family 5K was also conducted at Waterleaf this past Saturday. And that was in partnership with the Strength and Endurance Academy. We also conducted programs for senior bingo, senior cheer volleyball, and our pickleball tournament also occurred. We had 9 teams at Live Oak. We're currently planning for the November tournament. So if you all are interested, come on out to the pickleball.
I'd like to give a plug for the 5K. I think you did a great job organizing it, and there was another 5K going, a 5-miler going on that day. So considering we had competing events going on, I think you had a great turnout. So excited to see that build out. So thank you for putting that on. You did a great job running it.
All right. As we continue on, we had our social squad. We had 2 this month for September, and this program is for individuals with disabilities 18 and over. And then we had Special Olympics swim competition that also occurred. We had 8 athletes. We had 5 athletes, with many of them receiving gold, bronze, and silver. I want to say we brought home at least 5 gold medals in the day. And then we have Paint and Sip. We had Paint and Sip on September 12th, and Story in the Park just occurred this past Saturday in partnership with the Kyle Library. Upcoming events, so Movies in the Park will be October 10th. This will be done at Lake Kyle, and we will be showing Beetlejuice, Kyle Market Days, and Founders Parade. I would like to encourage you guys, if anybody is interested in participating in the Founders Parade, whether that be announcing or in any other kind of capacity. Again, this is on October 11th. The actual parade begins at 12 p.m. We would more than likely ask you to arrive about 10:15, but we are looking for announcers if anybody is interested in attending. And then the Market Days will begin at 8 a.m. October 17th, which is our Halloween Boogie All Abilities Dance. So we're looking for volunteers for that as well, if you would like to come and attend and dance the night away with our participants. And then October 18th, City Fest. October 21st, we will be doing our Unplugged Texas, which is a Traps initiative, and just to get people off their phones and out in the parks. And it's just going to be a free event that we're going to have different programming out at Steeplechase Park. And this will be beginning at 6, if I'm not mistaken. And then October 25th, Center Street Trick or Treat. And then October 28th, the First Responders event. All right, programming. So overall, I touched on all of these in the last meeting. In the last presentation. So if you have any questions, I can take any questions regarding anything that's listed here. All right. Same thing on aquatics. But one main thing I want to touch on here is that we will be opening for the season again on the 23rd, closing August 31st, and we will go weekends only August 8th, and hiring will open in December for the seasonal. All right, and I would like to pass it over to Mr. Scotto.
Thank you. Chris Escoto, Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation. If we haven't talked enough about park planning or CIP projects, here I am again. So one of the things that we wanted to provide and the feedback that we received this past meeting was the different funding buckets, right? So what are the various funding buckets that we oversee or that we have? I capture most of them on here. This is mostly an introduction. We're going to be providing an agenda item for you next week or next month, I'm sorry, that we'll be able to go a little bit deeper on a lot of these funding buckets. But overall, just wanted to be able to provide you with this. Every project is different. There's various scope, there's various buckets, various locations. As you're aware, I think there was a conversation about the TERS districts earlier today. Those are specific to certain areas. So I'm not going to touch on each one of these, but just the only thing that I would want to highlight is that the city does receive general fund dollars, but the way that those are used, there's different uses to that. There is the operating side of the house, and then there's a capital side of the house as well. And again, I'm going to reiterate a little bit more of that in next month's presentation, where we're going to go a little bit deeper into park planning and really the strategy behind it all. Moving forward, the presentation itself for the updates, rather than just having to touch on every little deal, it's going to be a different format for you. But here you get to at least identify by section or by category the various park projects that we have, whether it's a park itself, a trail, a facility, or public art. Just have it separated by you. And of course, there is some funding code or funding aspect as far as how that's originated. One component that I want to highlight on is the transparency portal. If you may not be aware, you can access the current status of each project that you saw on this prior screen. So if you go to the City of Kyle website, just took screenshots on how you can get there. Ultimately going on the City of Kyle website, which is currently under remodel. It's still active, but it will be improved here in the very near future. I think we're kicking off a new website, or at least new look within this next month. But overall, you are able to go to this what they call the transparency portal, where you're able to go select the capital section, as you see on screen, select Park CIP. Takes you to this landing page. As I mentioned, you get to see all the various projects in the similar format where you can see it by parks, trails, facilities. And then there's a snapshot of a document that myself and our park project and planning manager, Mr. Will Atkinson, keep track of on a weekly basis, where there's a status update as far as where are we within that project. So just want to make you aware that that's available for anybody to get to currently. Solicitations for like public engagement. That it's a different website, but you are still able to go to our City of Kyle website. If you go under procurement website, there is a tab there that says active bids. So anybody that's interested in anything City of Kyle can pre-register as a vendor, and they automatically get messages. But it can be found on our website. It's a little bit different. The purpose of this transparency portal is the word itself being transparent as far as where we are within that park project itself. The bid aspect of that is a little bit different, but that could be something that we can further explore. But as I mentioned, with it being different, there's a procurement aspect of it, and then there is the project status on a day-to-day basis. So it's a little bit different, but it still lives in the same website. But we can explore ways to kind of combine that. It's something that, again, we're improving our website, so that could be feedback we could give our communications team. And as I mentioned earlier, I reformatted this rather than giving you the same update every month. I just put it in this format here. I mean, if there's any questions about any project here, More than glad to answer any questions, but what I'm going to do is give it to you in this format, where it'll be a table format, but I am going to pull out bits and pieces as far as updates for me to be able to highlight, rather than me having to hit on all 28 projects every month. So if there's any questions about public art, I welcome any questions now. If not, I'll go on to the next slide. Trail projects. These are the 4 active trail projects that we have. The latest status, as I mentioned, is identified there. I believe I'm gonna, pretty sure I'm pulling one of these to be able to give you a little bit more highlight on. But what we reported last month, there's really not a major status update or major milestone that's changed from last month. So anything about trails? Park projects, there are a number of park projects. Again, I'm going to be pulling a lot of this information and just highlighting, but right now what you see here on screen is Lake Kensington, the skate park, Sportsplex, and the Greg Clark Park master plan that you received an update for today. Questions, feedback? Right.
Just for because it's kind of hard to keep track of who's spoken to us.
Oh, yeah.
Might be beneficial to us.
Yeah, I could do that. Waterleaf, Steeplechase Lake Kyle, and the Mayor Kyle Hearts and Restroom. There's a lot of scope to this, but ultimately it's Mayor Kyle Hearts and Restroom, Fountain Concept, and the Krug Center feasibility. I will have an update here about that last tab, but the top 3 are pretty fresh. Any questions about those processes? Last but not least, Steeplechase, Waterleaf parking lots, the Waterleaf playground, Plum Creek restroom, and park signage that you all received an update for today. No question, I'll just keep sliding. Park projects, so the last bit of park projects here is the Kyle Community Center and the Heroes Memorial Restroom. For this one, I would say that last one is on pause, just based on different opportunities that the city is currently exploring with potential partnerships. But that one will remain on here as just as a pause. And when I have an update, I'll be able to provide that update for you all. But there's an active RFP that we're exploring that's going to be adjacent to that park that we're looking to maybe collaborate with them on a possibility of installing a restroom. So that's the reason why it's on hold. All right, and so just want to highlight the Steeplechase Playground. I would say in my career, that's for ribbon cutting of a playground, it was the most that I've ever seen it, a well-attended event. We probably had roughly about, I think we counted 300 plus individuals that were in attendance. It probably was because we had free barbecue, but it was well attended, and every day we see a lot of people out there. So just want to thank everyone that was in attendance. We think it was a great event, and you get to see a little bit of photos here of how the community enjoyed it. Waterleaf Playground, this is active. Every time I drive out there, if you were out there this past weekend for the 5K event, you notice that there was construction going on. So the playground structure is up. They're still working on it. They're currently working on forming the sidewalks for the trail itself. We do envision having the ribbon cutting ceremony sometime, it says early mid-October. I think it'll be closer to late October, but we should have that information shortly to you all to invite you for that ribbon cutting. So we're not that far from there. Skate park. I do want to invite you all to the groundbreaking ceremony. If you should be receiving, if you haven't already, you'll be receiving notification to invite you for the groundbreaking ceremony on October 24th for us to be able to hit the ball going over at the skate park itself. So we have it's going to be just public speakers, pretty low key, but it's one of those components that we did want to celebrate this major milestone. And we do expect construction of this following not too far after that. We're currently in the process of finalizing an early grading permit to be able to get the ball rolling again and start moving dirt out there on site. I would say that staff did remove quite a bit of park furnishings through our social media pages. We did message that we started removing lights, trash receptacles, water fountains, park benches. That was part of the scope that the city had to do in order to get the ball moving for the consultant or for the contractor to come in here and start moving dirt. So that's well underway. Everything's been removed. Really, we're just waiting for the groundbreaking ceremony to get started. So we'll be inviting you all to that here soon. Lake Kensington Nature Park. There is a big update on this. If you haven't seen on our socials, there's an active survey happening currently. There's also a dedicated landing page, a website. It's lakekensingtonnaturepark.com. If you go to that link now, you'll land on this page that you see on screen, and we invite you all to forward this survey to the entire community so we can identify with those base improvements. And this will be a future item that will be brought to this body for further feedback, just like we did with the other 3 concepts or the other 4 concepts today. The Mary Kyle Hartshorn Restroom, Fountain, and Krug Center. This is an ongoing project that we hosted an open house on September 4th. It wasn't attended in the sense like the other PROS master plan, but we feel like we got quite a bit of good feedback. There's 3 different scopes to this. There's a full design for the restroom. There's a fountain, reimagining the fountain itself, as well as a feasibility for the Krug Center. How do we maximize its current use or its floor plan? Can we redo the bathrooms, all those various components that are currently had? So there's been a number of assessments conducted. We did go to Texas Historical Commission. We've had a couple meetings with Texas Historical Commission. There's, as you all are aware, it's a historical site. So there's also been permits that have been filed in the past. So we're trying to understand what can happen, what can't happen, what's the process for us to create the restroom itself. So those are all channels that we are working on, as well as we actually had a meeting this past week with the Hays County Historical Commission just across the street here at the train depot. And it went very well. We got a lot of great feedback. So this is an item that will be brought forward to Park Board as well as Council. We are going to have a meeting with Council on the 21st, and in our scheduled meeting in October, we're going to be bringing this item forward. But ultimately, we feel like we got quite a bit of direction from not only the community, but both of those bodies, the historical bodies that give us those parameters and really understanding of what we can bring forward. And that's what the consultant is going to be providing you all with this next month. Any questions about those projects before I move? As a reminder, here's just the dates for our upcoming board meetings that we have. Keep in mind the November and the December is not happening the last week as it's currently programmed because we changed the dates to accommodate those holidays. So what you see here is November 17th and December 15th. Last but not least, I'm going to bring up our director here, but just we do have some outgoing board members, Ms. Julie Orgish as well as Ms. Ann Duhan, that have instilled a number of hours. I mean, today we're here for almost 4 hours. I think it's a record. And so just want to, I mean, we're grateful for your service, grateful for your leadership, all the feedback that you've provided to us. We take it to heart. We want to make sure that we're providing the best products that we can out in the park system. So just on behalf of Parks and Recreation, we do have something small for you. We do want to take a photo with everybody. But just want to thank you guys from our hearts, the community hearts, and everyone for your time in serving this body.
May I say something?
Of course.
I want to thank everybody so much, all of the board members I've had the pleasure of serving with. I am so excited for this new team, and I say new, I've been here 6 years. So excited for the new team, for the professionalism that I see, for people like Amy, who 9 weeks out of every year, every summer, watched my daughter for me with the City of Kyle Parks and Rec summer camp. I can tell you that as a single parent, that was one of the things that financially saved me. It also gave me strength and comfort knowing where my child was. My daughter's in her second year of college, and this summer we were going through her room, and we found a letter that she had kept that one of the camp counselors had written her 10 years ago. It meant that much to her. And then my experience with being probably the oldest kickball player in the league for many years. It just, Parks and Recs, it brings us together. And, you know, I see wonderful things in the future with this team, and I'm so excited to see what y'all come up with. And thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for serving. We intentionally stacked this agenda so we could keep you guys longer. We didn't want to see you go. But thank you, Deputy Director Escoto.
Could I add something real quick?
Yes.
So when I first moved here, I live in the Button Creek area, as I probably mention every single meeting, but part of me was, what can I do to make the community better? And it was between planning and zoning and park and recs. And I got in park and recs. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but it's been great watching the group grow, the enthusiasm, the excitement, and just watching the community come together. Like Steeplechase was awesome. The 5K felt very fortuitous that I'm ending my tenure here, and we did run through my neighborhood. So it came full circle of wanting to speak up on behalf of that area and just seeing all the things come out there. So I'm excited. I'll be rooting for y'all. If y'all ever need anything, you still got to volunteer in me, but very excited, and I'll be on the sidelines cheering for you. So thank you for letting me be part of the process.
Thank you. And Board Member Orgus, remember what I told you when you jumped to a different board?
Yes.
Said you downgraded, leaving Park and Rec. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for your service. And so, Board Member Orgus and Board Member Duhan, we have a plaque for each of you. It's a great segue, Board Member Orgus, based on what you just said, making the difference. It's time for us to stand and cheer for the doer, the achiever, the one who recognizes the challenge and does something about it, Vince Lombardi. So at this moment, I'd like to present these plaques to
We're going to take a picture afterwards too, but just want to say thank you, and that ends my presentation.
I guess we have one last item, item 7, or was that item 7?
I think that was it.
Okay. I didn't.
That's it.
I didn't check it off, so let's make sure.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that. Julia and Julianne. Aye.
Aye.